Hello and welcome to the Captain's Table, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Paul Berserker01 Batman Shelley, your humble host and space bartender here at the AstroPub, your space bar at the end of the universe, and your facilitator here on the Captain's Table. This is a podcast where I talk with people from all over the Star Citizen universe to talk about Star Citizen in general. If you're wondering what that number is, if you're watching this live on YouTube or in the pre-recorded on YouTube, after the fact on YouTube, that is the number for our pubathon. So that is how many hours I have left. Just 2 hours and 31 minutes, which, knowing how Captain's Tables go, that's probably how long we're going to go over the Captain's Table today, especially with the topic that we have on hand. But before we get into too depth of the topic, we'll start off with introductions. I'll start with you, Mr. Radar Ranger. Andy, who are you? What do you do in Star Citizen, and where can they find you?
Yes, so I am, as I usually say, I'm a self-professed Star Citizen geek. I'm the CEO of a company that makes an app called My Radar, and it's a weather app that's kind of popular here in the States. You heard of it?
Yeah, it's really good.
All right, good. Good. We got one customer.
I was say Tree works in pararescue, so I'm sure he's did some of it. So.
Oh, very cool.
Yes, it is on my phone.
Yeah. that is awesome. That is good to hear. So the short version here for the kids in the audience. We, back in 2017, so the app is a weather app. Back in 2017, we did this collaboration with CIG where we took their moons from the game and allowed you to view them inside the app. It was kind of a neat little experiment that we did, and that was a lot of fun. I presented at the 2017 Citizen Con, so if you want to go back and watch about it, you can see what I was babbling about back at the time. But it was very cool. But that's me. You can find me. I don't stream or regularly or anything like that, but I do have a Twitter account if you want to reach me there. It's @green at Twitter, or X as they call it.
And Tree, who are you? What do you do in Star Citizen? Where can they find you?
I am Tree 0311. That's just the way we say it in the Marines. That 0311 is my original MOS when I was a rifleman way back when. But I'm a amateur content creator. I produce the Pathfinders podcast with Nazareth, where we are charting the way through all the nebulous information surrounding Star Citizen Squadron 42 and their development. And we usually have a show more often than not every other week or so, and we follow the monthly reports, the roadmap roundups, progress tracker updates, which Gib in great detail, as well as we do deep dives into the development of different mechanics, technologies that CIG are building for the games in order to shed some light onto how they work and what they do. I also do another podcast intermittently called Armchair Admirals and Generals with other members of the military, where we just look at aspects of the game from a military and veteran perspective, and just share our thoughts. And I do all of my all the monies that I get from Twitch and YouTube go to charity in their entirety. I keep no money for myself. I donate it all, plus a little bit topped off from myself to stackup.org, which is a charity that helps connect veterans and members of the military with video games and gaming communities to help combat PTSD. So that's what I'm all about. So if you like that sort of cause and you want to support Stack Up, come hang out in my streams, watch my videos on YouTube. They're posted all there, and be a part of the community. It's a lot of fun. Oh, one last thing. Sorry. Shameless plug. Got a side project I'm working on. I'm doing the world building of a game I hope to design or learn to design called Give Them Hope. And so I just started a world building series that I've been doing on Twitch and posting on my YouTube. It's been a lot of fun. I have an artist who's working with me, who is also a veteran, to work on the concept art for it. He's working on the concept art for your hero ship, which is the Alliance Marine ship Nassau. So if world building and lore are your thing, and I bet if you're here, that might be your thing, go and check it out. It's been a lot of fun. And I'm always looking for feedback. So if you want to see the timeline that I've built, or the source document that I'm writing, and you want to provide feedback, you can do so in my Discord in the comments on the videos, but the links are open for all. So I would love to hear your thoughts. So
awesome. I've been seeing you kind of talk about that on social media, but I haven't been able to watch them yet. So
it is a fun creative outlet, and it's an idea that I've had in my head for years. At first, it started out as a book I wanted to write, and now it's
game.
a game I want to have developed, and maybe a book too. But
and last but certainly not least, the Admiral of Imperial Arms himself, Mr. Loken Plays. Who are you? What do you do in Star Citizen, and where can they find you?
Hi everyone. If you watch Astro's content by now, you should probably have seen me at least at some point. If you haven't, then hi, I'm Loken. I'm some British guy who makes content occasionally on Twitch. And by occasionally, I mean I've been doing this for 9 years now. It's been a long time. Oh god, I've just realised it's been a long time. But yes, I do content creation here on Twitch, and I've been dipping my toes into other platforms to lesser or greater success. But yes, you'll find me every day of the week basically, other than Saturday, Sundays. So Monday through Friday, doing something in SC or other games. Basically, I'll have my live streams that I do, and also of course Paul and we do our pub and plays Fridays as well, which have been a lot of fun to do.
Yeah.
We either dip our toes into some SC multi-crew, which we've been doing recently for Overdrive, or we'll do other games. So that's me basically.
Yeah, we've done Helldivers and Dark Tide.
Oh god, we've done Dark Tide, Helldivers. We did Rogue Trader for a bit, didn't we?
We did Deep Rock Galactic.
Oh yes, Deep Rock. Yep.
So we've done lots of stuff like that. So
indeed.
All right,
Freedom,
Loken,
Rock and
voice actor.
Stone,
Yes.
all the good stuff.
Yes. All right. So before I get started, as well as I do want to do the plug ahead of time, because if you've been watching these captain's tables, it does mean a lot if you hit that like button on YouTube and you leave a comment or a rating on the podcast formats, because that does help kind of spread the word and give us more attention, and it lets the algorithms of the various platforms go, this person is good, you should watch them if you enjoy Star Citizen, or you should listen to this if you enjoy Star Citizen. So that would mean a lot to me. And of course, you can always join us live at twitch.tv/TheAstroPub, youtube.com/TheAstroPubLive, with a new time, because we're going to experiment for this month, which is at 4 p.m. Eastern, which is 1 p.m. Pacific, because I want to try to get more folks from the EU sphere over, because it just makes it so they don't have to start at midnight for joining these sorts of things. So, but with that all out of the way, let's talk about the topic for today. As you could probably tell if you've been looking at the thumbnail and the title, we're talking about capital ships. Now, I set up this captain's table a month ago, and all of these folks joined me because they are all super fans of capital ships. Every single one of them,
Uber nerd,
are like, this is their if not their idea of what they want to do in Star Citizen, it's close to what they want to do in Star Citizen. So this is very much a like a passionate discussion. So keep that in mind, is that everyone here is coming from a point of passion and really wanting to see this come through. But one of the things that is often kind of banted about with capital ships, because we are getting closer to capital ship gameplay with things like server meshing testing coming through and being pretty successful, the Polaris being wrapped up, and with multi-crew gameplay testing. Is that 3.2.3, or is that it's being I think it's 3.2.3.
In
Arena Commander. Yeah,
Arena Commander, whatchamacallit, the test.
I think so.
Starting the testing modes.
I think they were aiming for it, but did they confirm it yet?
I think it's still in tentative, so it's still like a 60% possibility that it's going to be done. But because it's on the release view now, so the pieces are coming into place for capital ship gameplay. And the question that often comes up, and this happened when CIG started talking about multi-crew gameplay, and a lot of people went, "Oh, can I get is my capital ship worth it? Am I going to be able to use my capital ship?" And a lot of people panicked about like just how much effort it's going to be able to run a capital ship. So I wanted to have a discussion on like honest looking at not just capital ships as cool status symbols or just the idea of what capital ships may be, but looking at it in terms of the gameplay, the fundamentals, like how CIG is seems to be looking at the game, the ships in terms of how it fits into the puzzle that is Star Citizen, both through like missions and through sort of the sandbox sides of things. And for those who are wondering, because this came up in this discussion earlier, the definition that CIG uses of capital ships is if it has a size 4 component. A size 4 component means that it is a capital ship. There is only 2 capital ships currently in game: the 890 Jump and the
Reclaimer.
Reclaimer, yeah.
And the best way of putting it is that once you get to size 4, that component is no longer a replaceable item. It is built as part of the superstructure of the ship. You cannot change it or modify it. It is like built with the ship. So, you know, the power plant of the Reclaimer is built around the Reclaimer is built around that power plant. You know, the same with, I think, the shield generators. It could be the power plant for the 890, but it's a similar idea. So, with that all kind of out of kind of the way, let's discuss about what we see as capital ship gameplay in Star Citizen in the near future. So in the next year or 2 years. I'll start with you, Loken, on this one. Based off of your experience, based off what you know, and based off what you're maybe a little bit hoping for, what do you see capital ship gameplay mostly focusing around?
That's a good question. I mean, right now, Stanton's a little too small as a single system to really support full send capital ship gameplay, in my personal opinion. And that's just because these ships are absolute monolithic leviathans. You know, they just are huge vessels, and they're real. I really feel as though they're going to shine when we have multiple systems to traverse on a regular basis. Because at that point, you know, the capital ship in any sort of intellectual property, not just SC, but you know they're usually the focal point. They're the hero ship of, you know, or the place where everything happens and you leave and come back to. It's a floating space station in a lot of instances, you know. So gameplay wise, I would feel that if we're going to see any gameplay for capital ships, it probably will be combat, because that's the most refined aspect of SC right now and has had the most development time, and thus would be the most ready to accept such a new dynamic, so to speak. You know, that'll be where I'd see the focus would be. The other focus I could see it there being sooner rather than later would be mass cargo. So whole ease, that kind of, you know, mass transit, because we're about to see a refactor of sort of cargo again, and sort of see the persistent hangars come into play. So I could see those 2 areas being the most ready for the capital grade gameplay.
Okay. Tree, same question to you. Where do you see capital ship gameplay in the next sort of like year or 2 years time frame for Star Citizen?
I think Logan's first point really hit it on the head, in that Stanton is, you know, it is small. It is only 5 AU, and even Pyro, you know, they don't want to really shock the system really bad, so they made Pyro even smaller. It's just under 10 now, when it used to be 13, and before that it was up to 17. And so they don't want to shock the player base too hard with just a massive increase in size. Like, I mean, it's still doubling the diameter, but it's not, you know, a huge, massive change. So they're sort of going to like get us used to it. But that it bring up a good point, because going, not only traversing the system, but going back and forth, you know, is really where capital ships are going to shine a lot. I'm going to drop a link in the chat, because that is one of the main advantages of larger ships, is the ability for quantum travel to it not necessarily to be able to quantum travel faster, but to be able to make longer jumps before your quantum drive overheats and you have to come out of quantum and then cool down. Now we don't really have that much of a problem with that in Stanton, because it's really not that far. But in longer systems, you know, if you're traversing that, even if you have the fuel, if you have a smaller ship and a smaller drive and everything, and smaller heat capacity, you're going to overheat, and you're going to have to stop, and it's going to have to, you know, cool down. You know, essentially the steam's going to boil off the radiator into space, and you'll have to wait before you resume your journey. Well, a capital ship is going to allow for longer legs. And so that's a really big thing, especially like what Logan was talking about with hauling. And that's really going to make a big difference probably when we get to really to 3 to 5 systems, you know, that sort of 1.0 release state. But I think that the next big thing beyond, you know, everybody's interested in combat, everybody wants big guns and missiles and torpedoes go boom. You know, and the multi-crew engineering aspect is going to be really cool for that. But I think the other big aspect is, and Paul, we were talking about this because we go back and forth about the regen thing, but the people hate having to go back to landing zones, right? Or their landing zone. The capital ship is really going to be the best way for you to do the hermit crab thing, not just for you, but you and your friends, the group of people that you play with on a more regular basis, and be able to exist, in a way that allows you to, essentially, go out and not have to, you don't have to come back to civilization for longer periods, because you can fill it up with your supplies, everything that you need to go out and just keep playing and log in and log out every day without having to come back to a station or a landing zone, to just be able to keep going for the most part with, little detours here and there, essentially to, top off this supply or that supply. And so I think that's probably, for me, the thing, especially like with our first next capital ship being ostensibly being the Polaris. The Polaris is the poster child for that gameplay. You've got a hangar, it can land, it's got a ramp for putting vehicles in, it's got an armory, it's got a med bay, it has a brig, you've got crew quarters, it's got several hundred SCU of cargo. You and a bunch of your friends, and you don't have to have everybody, but because you can have, we don't know how beds are going to work. Chad McKinney just talked about how they're going to be revamping bed logging. But ostensibly, you could have plenty of people logging in and out of that Polaris in your org and have a great time, playing on a regular basis without having to. You just wake up and you go, because everything's right there. Versus waking up and running to this elevator and riding this
We're all
tram.
waiting for that time frame.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. With everything that's coming along, that's the dream for me.
Radar Ranger, same question to you. Where do you see capital ship gameplay going in the next in the next year or two?
I think both these guys are right. I think it's going to be combat in the short term. I think what they represent, like these guys have said, is it's your best opportunity for group gameplay, for everybody to kind of gather up in one spot and have a common cause and kind of go places and do things. I think it's kind of hard to answer the question because we're still probably waiting on a lot of mechanics to kind of manifest before we really see how they're going to fit into the big picture. I think, the obvious ones are combat and having a place to sort of work out as a mobile base. But once base building comes into play, that could change. And, some of the first thought is, okay, the natural progression. If you do wind up having a ground base, then can you use a capital ship to defend it? Mm-hmm. Getting into atmosphere with a capital ship could be an issue. How do you protect a base from orbit? Is space too big to the point where being able to actually catch somebody who might be trying to fly down to your base and do some damage, is that going to be practical? I've kind of said that, Chris has done a really good job of building this big universe, but now he needs to do something to make it smaller. Mm-hmm. So in other words, there's so much room in it. How do you bring players together so they can actually have that in-game content where they have the confrontation and they start fighting each other? And if space is so big you can literally fly down to a base and never be seen by anybody, that kind of makes things a little bit more challenging. And so like having like a scanner or something like that allows you to see further out and make those encounters happen, that's when you start to have the combat and the group gameplay. I would challenge the one point though that Stanton is too small, because, and again, this is just an opinion and I might not necessarily be right here, but if you think about it, we've all been living on this single plane in Stanton, in between the planets. But if you rotate it, there's all this other space above and below it. And if there's content out in those areas, asteroid fields, resources, things like that you can actually go out and fight for, then I can see more of this in-space engagement, I mean, I can be long-winded here, but like I think if you look at a lot of the other MMOs, and especially MMOs that include crafting and base building, orgs tend to have that common cause of building a base, gathering resources to build it, fighting over the resources, that kind of thing. I think that's going to wind up playing a big role ultimately in, how players get together and do things in space. But I don't know, like in the short term, I'm not sure where we're going to be with capital ships and how that plays off that.
Yeah, it's a good point. That's one of those things that right now you can't really go above or below the plane of the ecliptic because it's just the way that the quantum travel works. But I think that's going to change when the new quantum travel stuff comes out, because you can basically just point and go. So if they can put like asteroids or rogue planets or those sorts of things off access, then we'd have access to it.
There's plenty of if you go look at the star map, there are plenty of planets that have orbits off the ecliptic.
Mhm.
And so not only do those planets have their orbits off the ecliptic, but the orbits of their Lagrange points would be off the ecliptic.
Yeah.
And you can have, so there's going to be things that are off the ecliptic and reasons to go off the ecliptic. And it's not that Stanton's too small. It's just that it is small. If you look at the start, like, and I did a podcast segment on this and I have a spreadsheet, but Stanton, the systems that are like 1 to 10 AU are about a third of all the systems in game.
Mm.
And then from 10 to 30 is another third. And then everything above 30 is about another third. If you break it up, that 100 star systems-ish into a third. And so small systems serve a purpose, because not everybody's going to be wanting to make longer jumps and having to deal with everything that goes with, but some people are going to. A lot. It's about creating, not only having size differences in systems, but also mixing that with the other multiplier of the amount of infrastructure in those systems is what gives them variety.
Yeah.
You can have a extra small system like Stanton with very little infrastructure, and that makes it a lot different than Stanton. You can have a very large system with probably gobs of infrastructure, but it's still big distances. So it just makes things interesting.
I got to ask, you said you made a spreadsheet. Did you look at all on gate sizes and whether or not capital ships could traverse those easily, like the ones we're going to have access to right off the bat? Like, I'm wondering if that's going to wind up being a restrictor.
So that's the thing, is CIG has been so cagey about that, and they're not going to say anything until they start adding in jump points. But when I did that spreadsheet, it's because I noticed that, and the SC Tools wiki has now caught up and gone in and made those changes. But a couple of years back, I noticed, wait a minute, why are the system sizes different on the SC Tools wiki than they are on the star map? Well, it turns out that the SC Tools wiki had pulled all that information from when the star map had first released. Paul, was it end of 2016?
End of 2016,
right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And they hadn't updated it. And then CIG had been making changes in the background. And I found out that there's other people tracking these changes, and they only tracked them for a couple of years, but they'd been making changes in system sizes and the position of planets and other bodies. They'd added jump points. They'd changed jump point sizes. So they've been playing around with it a lot. Sherry has been super clever and sneaky messing around.
Yeah, because that's one of the things they don't post about. They don't talk about the retcons like that. And they do go back and change lore aspects without telling anybody. Like, they just go back and change like retcon certain aspects here and there because it's happened. Like, for instance, Pyro is the second largest jump point nexus now. It and Terra are the two biggest jump point nexuses, which is funny because it's like the most stable, well crafted, like home of most of political and like economic sources for the UEE, which has a jump point to not jump point, because I don't think there's a jump point to Terra from Pyro. There might be.
Isn't there one from like Terra to Nyx to Pyro, isn't it?
There is, yeah. There's
yeah.
Nyx to Pyro, and then there's one from Stanton to Terra. And then like practically right next door is like the crack house. It's the meth lab next to the like the mansion is what it's going on.
I've been in this neighborhood before. So like, and I'm not calling you out, Shifty streaming and chat. It's not that gate sizes do not matter. It's that we don't know how they matter.
Yeah.
CIG hasn't told us.
Yeah.
Well, I thought they said that like large capital ships might not be able to go through small gates.
That was the original plan. Yeah.
Way back when, for a small jump point, they said the max size ship to go through that was a freelancer, and that was ages ago. But if they didn't have ideas of how they wanted to force us to take different routes based off of themes, they wouldn't be making jump point sizes, adding jump points, changing those sizes. They have a plan. We don't know exactly what it is yet, but they do have a plan. It is going to matter somehow, you know, and they could change the jump point size from Stanton to Pyro.
They probably will.
They can do, like Jake always says, they can do what they want.
Yeah.
So,
when you think about it, that's going to play a significant role on gameplay, though, because if we do get into this mode where everybody wants to jump on a capital ship to go off and fight someplace, if the cap ship can't go through a gate to get somewhere, then you have to wind up taking fighter ships and have the bigger ships go around. I mean, I could see how that is going to dramatically change things later on if they keep tweaking it.
And that's why, like, Paul always says lore equals gameplay, and I've stolen that and made that my own. But like, one of my favorite lore equals gameplay things is the existence of the Stanton to what do they call it? The Stanton to Castra route or something like that. I forget what they call it, but it's Stanton to Castra run. It's the Star Citizen equivalent of the Kepler run, or Kepler,
Kessel run.
Kessel run.
Yeah, Kessel run. Thank you. Why did I say Kepler? And basically, it is you're going from Stanton to Castra via Pyro and Nyx because it shortens the amount of AU distance that you have to travel by over half, versus if you took the safe route going to Terra, then Hadrian. I think it's Terra, Hadrian, and then Castra.
Then Castra. Yeah.
It more than doubles the AU travel, and so you can imagine, especially like, maybe you have to pay a toll or some sort of, if you're hauling, maybe every time you go and you use those gates and you pass through all the custom stuff, you have to pay a fee. Well, what if you don't have to pay a fee going through Pyro and Nyx, and it shortens your time, but you're having to go through pirate controlled space? That's gameplay right there. That's a player
decision.
Agency and choice. Yeah.
Meaningful decisions. Yeah.
Gonna save me gas, but I'm probably gonna get shot.
There is one recent discussion by the writers, because there was a discussion on like, because the problem is that the current jump point from Stanton to Pyro is a medium jump point according to the to all the sources. But we do know that the Idrises that Xenothreat use are coming from Pyro. So does that mean that medium jump points can hold Idrises? And that was a question that was asked to the writers, and the writers did in one of their quarterly questions. They said, don't read too much into it because we're completely changing how jump points work. So, there's some major changes that's going on between that. So it's hard to tell. Now, I'm going to ask the next question, because this is going to come up as well. We've kind of talked a little bit about the future, the near future of capital ships. CIG has recently tried to kind of reassure people, say, yes, you can play with your capital ships solo, and we're not going to stop you and force you to have multiple people to use capital ships. But I want your honest opinion. Do you think people, near future, next 2 years, will be able to effectively fly a capital ship on their own without a crew? Radar Ranger, I'll start with you on that one.
This is what I usually say. Star Trek 3. All of us nerds must have watched this movie. I would, at least the guys who are my age here.
Yeah.
In the movie, essentially, Scotty rigs the Enterprise so it could be flown by a trainee and 2 chimpanzees. I think that's what he said.
Yeah.
I think, probably, yeah. If you want to take your javelin out by yourself and put it around. I mean, okay, so there's two answers here.
Yes.
You want to take it out by yourself and put it around and literally run between consoles, and possibly, depending on how they arrange the UI and the capital ship interfaces on the consoles, maybe you can do a lot of stuff from one spot. But it probably is obviously not going to be the most ideal situation. Being able to do it with NPCs, I don't see that happening right away. I think they have a ways to go still, probably, on being able to build out the NPC infrastructure to be that capable. I think you could do it, and people will. Like, I'm gonna wanna, I don't always get a chance to play with everybody else, and have the flexibility to arrange a schedule with a group. That can be, that in and of itself is a challenge for this game moving forward. But I think you'll be able to do it, but obviously it's not gonna be ideal, and it shouldn't be. I kind of feel like if you gave that kind of power to one individual, that maybe it is a little bit unfair. I don't know. I'm open to hear what other people think, though.
So you don't think that we're going to have, like, in the next couple of years, we probably won't have like AI crew and like blades and stuff like that?
It's tough to put a time frame on it. Like, I have a hard time imagining it's going to be out in the next 12 months. But if they do wind up having a considerable amount of resources that they took from Squadron 42, and they really can turn things around, then maybe. Okay. Obviously that's the goal at some point, but I don't know if we're talking the next 12 months.
Tree, same question. Oh, and chat wanted
boy.
me to define something like is capital? Can you effectively pilot a capital ship? What's effective? And I mean, when I say effective, I mean to be used for its purpose. So, like, if you're using a Polaris, I'm talking about going out and fighting things with a Polaris. If you're flying your whole C or your whole D, going out and trading with your whole D and whole C, you know, using your reclaimer to salvage. Is that, can you effectively do those sorts of things solo with one person?
That's kind of a spectrum because, like, if you're talking, say you're doing the whole C, let's just say scenario, we have 5 to 10 systems we're at release, and you just want to fly your whole C from Castra to Stanton and back via the safe route. I think that is possible and perfectly fine. Is there some risk? Yeah, I think you could possibly at some point get ambushed by pirates, but the risk is low because those are much more secure systems.
Yeah.
Is it going to be cost effective? No, because you're it's if you are doing all the maintenance on your own, you're going to have to make some stops and slow yourself down. That's going to be your maintenance. If you're paying to have the maintenance done, you're going to have to stop at stations and they'll have to pay to have the maintenance done for you. And that'll slow you down because that's going to take time. And so I think that is something that you can do by yourself. If you just want to be a lonely space trekker in your whole sea, you know, and you're going to pay NPCs or your AI to do everything for you, then that's one thing. But if you're talking about a more complex mechanic, like the reclaimer doing salvage, and you're going to do everything from that ship. You're going to munch it, you're going to scrape it, you're going to siphon it, all the things. I don't think that's going to be effective at all. You're just going to spend far more time running back and forth to different stations trying to get it done, you know, and that's just wasting all that time is going to make your operating costs go sky high. And I know that everybody's like, well, you can hire NPCs. And I'm like, I'm just kind of dubious about NPCs being able to do these complex behaviors, like with mining. If you're in a mole and you have 3 people operating turrets and you're trying to coordinate those turrets, how do you coordinate that? It's hard enough to do it with people. How do you coordinate that with NPCs? I don't foresee that level of coordination being realistic, as they push salvage along into a more complex gameplay. And that gets worse with combat. It's one thing having NPCs manning turrets, defensive turrets. I think that's a good use for them. That's a great use for them. But being able to coordinate with NPCs to do everything, I think you are high as a kite if you think that that's going to be a worthwhile endeavor. And endeavor. Now I gave John Crew another ulcer, but and it's you just have to be realistic with your expectations because those are complex mechanics with a lot of moving parts, and it doesn't matter how good the AI ends up being. You know, your ability to coordinate with them is going to be limited by your own abilities, but also based off the tools that CIG gives you. And I don't foresee them going through all this dev time to give you just the easiest tool so that way you can play Eve in Star Citizen. Because that's not the point of Star Citizen. And I want to throw a big old bucket of cold water on everybody right now when it comes to NPC and AI crew. Because NPCs who are going to crew your ship are going to be subsumption NPCs. They're going to be the most taxing ones on server resources. If you think that there's going to be unlimited subsumption NPCs for everybody to just run around and solo their Polaris or their Idris, when those NPCs take server resources and mean that CIG have to spin up additional servers, you are high. There's going to be a fixed population of subsumption NPCs relative to the player population, which means, congratulations, this is a labor market now.
You're going to have to pay them.
Yeah.
You're going to have to pay them. And if everybody's competing for those subsumption NPCs, most people aren't going to be able to afford them.
Yeah.
It's going to be the groups that work together and pool their resources to use them. So
I don't want to take any time from Loken, but I have to interject this. I think the question has to be asked in 2 phases. Can you or should you?
Should you? Okay.
Yeah.
In theory, you know, if you a
Yeah.
reclaimer is supposed to be able to gather resources at a much greater rate than, say, a prospector.
Yeah.
If you put all of that power into the hands of one person, then you're kind of falling into that trap of pay to win, in the sense that if you've gone through and you've bought this larger ship and you're running it on your own, if there's no penalty for that, if I, as you know, my Joe solo operator of a reclaimer, get to operate that thing on my own, I don't have to pay any party members or anything like that. Where's the downside? Who's gonna not do that if they have one? And how is that gonna seem to the guy in the prospector? You know,
And that's why I wanted to kind of talk about this in terms of a gameplay perspective, because I think a lot of people have these ideas in terms of their dreams and their hopes, but like what you just said, there are going to be limitations, and some of those limitations are going to be server resources, and they don't have infinite server resources, so they're going to intentionally limit the number of AIs that can be available for people to use. And they also want to do that anyways because they want to make you spend money, because they want to fight inflation, because they want to make sure that the game's currency isn't overinflated. And
so the server resources might not be as much of a big deal as much as you'd think, because they're sitting in a seat. And the minute you put an NPC just sitting in a seat, it's no longer about running physics and animating this guy and controlling where he goes and interacting with other stuff. It's very much procedural at that point. And I could be wrong. There could be something I'm totally missing here. But like, if they're literally
subsumption NPCs execute very expensive logic and they don't stop. The only time they stop is when they get streamed out. And even then, that logic can, because they have a lifetime. That's the whole plan for them, is they continue to live even when they're not on screen. They execute expensive logic. And so if they're on your ship and they're running around doing things, they're executing all this expensive logic. And if everybody has them, that's a lot of logic that the server is having to run. And that means that the number of servers that are required to manage a population of players goes up. So CIG is going to limit that, A, to make it realistic, and B, so they're not having to just spool up 100 servers for 100 people, because everybody wants to have 20 NPCs on their ship on top of, because the other thing is those subsumption NPCs, that population also has to be in the world, not hireable.
On the ships that you're fighting,
on the ships that you're fighting, and elsewhere, and so you're hiring a certain number from an overall population that is populating the game world. And can you imagine Chris Roberts saying, wait, you want me to give up all these NPCs that created to make this livable world that we're designing so that everybody can have NPC crew and the whole world ends up being empty? No. They're going to make the livable world first, and your number of AI crew is going to be significantly limited, which means the best ones are going to be the most expensive. And, so if you can get them, they'll be lower. If you want to understand how NPC crew is going to work, go play a colony sim.
Oh God,
go play a colony management sim. Yeah. If you watch the Quantum presentations about how they want NPCs to work, along with how it ties into resource management, everything about Quantum and the NPCs and their behaviors and such is core features of every colony management sim that's ever existed.
RimWorld's
Stranded Alien Dawn, RimWorld, and imagine that with multiple orders of magnitude, because they want to simulate millions of them.
They're simplifying it compared to something like RimWorld or Stranded and those kind of things, but it's still intense, because each player, each NPC is going to have a tag. They have these tag systems that already exist in the game for aggressive NPCs. So you'll have something like a pusher versus a sniper, versus a flanker, and they give them various different pools of credits that these NPCs can spend at any given encounter to try to randomize the encounter a little bit. So some NPCs will be more aggressive than others, and they've been applying that same logic to ships. So you'll have, say, maybe a captain of an Idris who's a pusher. That means that Idris captain is going to order his crew to get in close and knife fight you with his Idris. It may not be a good idea, but it's randomized. So it's designed to make it so that every time you face an Idris, you're not facing the same tactics. You're going to face some people who are absolutely insane, and other people who are going to hang back and lob shots at you with their railgun while they let their allies do the work for them. So
yeah, and someone in chat brings up a good point, is your reputation is going to matter with what NPCs you can hire or not hire.
Yeah.
Because they have traits. And if you're a murder hobo, good luck finding a lot of NPCs who are going to want to work with a murder hobo. Yeah.
Go play what for AI design? Stranded, Alien Dawn, or RimWorld are both good examples of how CIG is. They're very similar to what Quantum System looks like. So
yeah, RimWorld scales up really big, really fast, and so I like Stranded, Alien Dawn because it's a little bit more manageable if it's your first entry into a colony management sim. But I mean, RimWorld is one of the best games ever. But
and you can also see what happens with RimWorld. Unless you have a supercomputer, once you start getting beyond 10 colonists, that your computer starts to struggle, and that's the kind of information that CIG is running with some of their AI. Like their servers are going to implode. It's one of the reasons why when you go onto a busy server and you go to a bunker, it's like that you see them just stare at you for 5 minutes and then realize you're there and shoot you, is because that's what's happening to the back end. Their servers are on fire, so it's harder for them to catch up. So, anyways, go ahead.
Nakash, I'm going to correct you in chat. Server meshing is there to maintain performance. Yeah. As more entities and players come online, it is not there to dynamically spin up more NPC population. It's just there to allow for more of them to stream into the game as more players come online.
I think what Nakash is trying to say, though, is that it will allow for more, because that's really what it's there for. It's there to give more NPCs for the universe, so it feels less empty.
Yeah, so they'll be streamed in, but it's still going to be a fixed population. Because otherwise the cost of labor will go up and down, based off the time of day, and that the CIG isn't going to have that. It's
Logan.
Hi.
I think the question was, do you think it's going to be? And I think I'll place it the way, the two-phase question: can you run a capital ship in the near future solo, and should you run a capital ship solo?
So to answer the first part of the question, can you? Technically, yes, because technically the tools will be available to you, as these two gentlemen have spent quite a lot of time detailing in explicit detail. Should you, however, is going to be dependent on multiple factors, as again these gentlemen have gone in explicit detail to explain. The whole idea of as resources, number of NPCs available, your reputation system, who are you, where are you in the citizen, the Star Citizen verse? Are you somewhere that people can even be hired? Do you have enough money? Have you made enough money? There's a lot of logistics, both from a game perspective from the back end and also from in-game, to take into consideration when it comes to whether or not you should hire and run a capital vessel with NPC crew. It also would depend on the role as well. You might have a better job of it or luck of it if you're running a large-scale cargo vessel, which is going to require maybe less technical expertise overall, versus, say, for example, running a tight ship in a combat scenario, where you're going to need, people who are able to work together, so to speak, and the quality of the people you're working with will drastically change the overall efficiency of the vessel in question. So, there are multiple aspects to take into consideration when choosing whether or not to use an NPC to run a ship solo in the first place, and that will play a factor, will lead into whether or not you choose to go down that route. Personally, I think we'll see the most common situation will be a hybridization. A hybrid of certain NPCs that may do lesser skilled tasks, more manual, menial jobs that will require less overall financing to do, and the higher skilled jobs, so gunnery or maybe I have no idea. People using the mining beams on an Orion, for example, you might find those are taken by players. And that will probably end up being the sweet spot, I reckon.
Yeah, I like to use it as the Star Trek analogy. Your players are your officers. Your NPCs. Yeah, your NPCs are your red shirts. Yeah,
Yeah.
they're the ones
And the
that you,
lower deckers, you know.
yeah, you're the ones you stick in the turret, but you have a gunnery officer who's like, shoot that, and then all the NPCs go, yes, you know, because you know you want a gunnery officer to direct the guns, where the captain is telling the gunnery officer shoot this thing, so they don't have to worry about trying to order the NPCs to do that as well. So
Yeah,
distributing
you
that.
might very well find your players are heads of department. You know, your chief engineer is a player, your chief gunnery officer is a player, your chief science officer is a player, but maybe their staff members, their menials are NPCs or a mixture of both.
Yeah. So, I will also kind of echo. We'll talked about this a lot, and there is a question already on here, but I do want to clarify this because the question was like, well, they said something about the 1 to 10 NPC player ratio. Isn't that also going to show that we're that you know that they obviously aren't going to be limiting? It's important to remember that there are 3 different versions of AI. Subsumption is the one we deal with right now, the one that we see everywhere. The one step below that is called the virtual AI, which is sort of when a subsumption AI becomes when the pirate
when it
you're fighting
out.
Yeah, when the pirate you're fighting comes in, he's randomly rolled a set of statistics. That Ninetales guy and a buccaneer popping out of pulling you out of quantum and attacking you, he's randomly rolled. He's got a name, he's got background, whatever, but it's just randomly rolled. But when you die, when he kills you, he still survives. Now he goes from being popped into existence to having to act on his life. So now he has to have the sudden realization of who he is and what he wants, and has an existential crisis, and then runs off to do other things. And that's when he becomes a virtual NPC, where he's still technically loaded by the server or maybe the backend service, but he's doing a bunch of other things that players don't see them. And eventually, if no one interacts with him in his journey, he will then go back to being a quantum dot just somewhere in the universe in the background.
A VNPC can be run on, in the quantum simulation. It's not running on the server, but it's running in the background. So that way a subsumption NPC isn't executing physics logic when they're not streamed in. Mm-hmm. And so basically it just puts them it puts that same NPC at idle. Quanta, however, influence the probability volumes in an area. And so that way, if you're in a probability volume and it says this is influencing your chances of running into a pirate or a hauler or security, what have you, and then that will create just a randomized NPC. When those get streamed out, they just die. They disappear. Yeah. They don't continue to live on. So that the quanta can become physicalized when based off a probability volume roll, but once they get streamed out, they don't continue to exist. Whereas subsumption NPCs, when they get streamed out, they turn into VNPCs, and we don't have any of that yet.
Yeah.
And we just have subsumption logic running on the game servers right now.
Yeah, the other parts haven't been built yet, and those parts are the ones that they're planning on doing for the majority of it. That 10-to-1 ratio is mostly quantum. Yep. It's mostly the quantum simulation, the quanta individual data points that they show off all the time. That's really what it is. That doesn't mean you're going to see, say it starts as a million players. It doesn't mean you're going to have 10 million NPCs running around. It means you're going to have 10 million data points running around. Maybe 999,000 data points. Or 990,000 data points, and then that 10,000 is between 10 virtual NPCs and subsumptions that players are dealing with on a regular basis. So.
They said they got that the economic feel that they were looking for, they got with simulating about 100 quanta for a system the size of Stanton.
Yeah,
is what they're saying. But they could do millions.
Yeah, because they're just data points.
Multiple orders of magnitude. Yeah, because they're just data points.
To clarify for people who are like, this sounds like Skynet. This is technology they've been using for simulating economic scenarios in like economics, companies who deal with like those sorts of like NGOs who deal with like trying to help companies or help countries improve economics, especially in like third world situations, or similar technology to something like the the CDC uses to track viral spread. It's very
There's actually
similar.
some very good YouTube videos on it, believe it or not. I forget
Yeah.
the name of it, but there's a guy who has these little cartoon things that he uses for simulations exactly like that. Like how often or how bad would a disease spread, or how would this impact economic function, that kind of thing.
Yeah, it's a very basic program that's been around since like the 70s, since like the dawn of mechanical computers as a functioning like mainframe computers and stuff like that. It's something they've been using a lot. So
I think it's important just to take the opportunity here to take it back a bit from the more complicated jargon and just sort of like macro scale this out for people who may be newer to the game. In layman's terms, SE's AI is extremely complicated, multi-layered, multifaceted, multi-tiered, like everything they do, and as a result, is never going to be simple to implement it or run it. So just if you take that point of view from most of what CIG ends up doing, you're gonna be in a good place.
Yeah, and keep that in mind when you're dealing with just I'll just hire an NPC crew. A random like detailed explanation of what that entails. So we just talked about is the important part, is that it's not going to be as simple as I'm just going to do X. Like anything in Star Citizen I don't think is ever going to be simple in its process, and
it's
there will
not going
always
to be like go to X place to find just a list of NPCs. It'll be this person will have lived in life and had experiences that will influence their skill set, etc., which will be simulated at all, etc., etc. It's going to get very detailed very quickly, but it'll make the world feel amazing when it works.
Yes,
that's the whole point.
That's the whole point of it. Is it's the Star Citizen's about action reaction. You do something, there is going to be to impact you or the world around you, and that will have consequences that will have to be faced, including how many NPCs will want to work with you. So, all right. With that being said, let's get into the kind of we've kind of done a little primer, little stuff here. Now let's get into some of the details. Loken, I'm gonna ask you this question.
Mm-hmm.
How do you see like capital ship gameplay working in the verse in kind of their finalized version? Like what kind of gameplay does it fill in terms of because we know things like FPS gameplay, we have things like combat gameplay with like fighters, we have things like multi-crew gameplay. What sort of role does a capital ship fit in terms of the gameplay functions of the game?
Well, I mean, straight off the bat, a capital grade ship, no matter which size, scale, or discipline it belongs to, is going to be the ultimate apex for multiple crew gameplay. It's the multiplayer dream for a lot of people to have their dream vessel, their thing that they've worked toward for a long time, probably. They're the end game tier kit that will encourage the most multi-crew capability and the most multiplayer capability. So that needs to be said first and foremost. These will represent the pinnacle of everything that SE's striven to create when it comes to their starship designs, and why they go so detailed and so often, when it comes to all of the way that they go about their ship design process. This is the reason for it. As for gosh, what was the rest of the question? It's a long one. It was
it's like,
how are they going to get used?
Like, yeah, how are they using? Like what is their purpose? Basically, what is the purpose of a capital ship in your opinion, and how are they going to be used?
Again, it's going to depend on the role. Again, you're gonna have to break it down into what area of the game are you accessing. The role of a capital grade exploration vessel is different to a capital grade combat vessel, but ultimately they're going to be landmark powerhouses in a location. They're going to be the big beacon. They're like the equivalent of bringing out a sort of a large scale Titan almost in something like Eve. These are big vessels that come out. They are these large scale operations that are probably going on, because nothing about them is going to be cheap, no matter which discipline you're in. They're going to be expensive to run. They're going to be difficult to crew. They're going to be difficult to operate. They're going to need infrastructure behind them to operate. And what I mean by that is fuel costs. It's going to be crew cost. It's going to be it's going to be in a combat vessel ammunition cost. Those size 10 torps are going to be bloody expensive. The rail cannon munitions for an Idris are going to be expensive and difficult to replenish. Not everywhere is going to be able to stock a rail cannon shell. You know what I mean? It's just these aspects. So they are going to be guild almost tier operations or or org operations, and when they're deployed, they're probably not going to be there for your everyday milk run. You'll take a smaller ship for that. You're going to go and do a quick little scout somewhere. You're going to do a couple of missions here and there in a system. You're going to take a small ship for that. You bring out the capital grade vessel when you're there to make a statement. You're there to make a move. If let me just take an example of, let's say, my biggest interest is probably combat when it comes to capital grade grade gameplay. So you're going to bring out the capital grade gear when you are going to make a push on a location. So say you've got an op 4 organization that has a base out on a planet. You want to take them out, or you would like the resources of a system, or you want to move into that location for whatever reason that might be. You bring out the capital gear for that. You're going to use that as your staging post. That's going to have your boys with the guns on board. It's going to have your drop ships. It's going to have your it's going to have your support craft. It's going to have your main staging ground. It's a mobile base. You're a flotilla at that point. You're the United States Navy in space. That's what you are when you bring out capital grade gear. It's a big, massive operation. And they're going to be these big, enormous, charismatic, amazing vessels. And obviously you can see I'm very excited about this because, it's going to be, you're going to get that kind of, that everything's silent and suddenly just 10 ships warp in. And you're just like, bam, 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 bam. You've got these big boy capital ships there. And next thing you know, they're deploying and things are flying out of them. It's going to be crazy cool. But you're not going to do that for everything. These ships aren't going to be coming out all the time. These are tactical decisions. And again, that's from a combat perspective more than anything else, because you're going to be deliberately putting your nose in somewhere that's dangerous, and you're going to be risking the gear, and you're going to be risking it for a potential reward, whatever that reward might be. Maybe being paid by somebody to go and take out a target that they don't like, and you're the merc company they've hired, or maybe you as a corp have said, well, this location is going to be great for resources that we need for our operations to expand, so we need this location. You take it to a different perspective, a different location. Let's say cargo hauling as a place here. You might see those vessels coming out a little more often because they're not going to be sticking their noses in every dangerous corner of space. They're going to be going down hauling routes. Your Hull Ds and Es are going to be your gargantuan cargo carriers. The big cargo ships you see flying the oceans today. That's what they are. They'll be going for their routes. And these are going to be
running into bridges.
Yeah,
running into bridges and knocking things over. Yep,
getting stuck in waterways,
in Panama canals. Yes, up to no good. But yeah, they're going to be probably a more common sight. These vessels are going to be making big money, and they might be attached to larger scale organizations as part of the logistics chain. And I talk about logistics a lot because ultimately, to operate and run capital ships is going to be costly. I mean, I'll mention what we did the day, Paul. Sorry, yesterday, wasn't it? Yeah. With the 890 jump, all I did was fly it out of Area 18 and quantum over to Hurston, and the hydrogen fuel cost alone was 15,000 UEC, and I'd used less than 10% of the fuel capacity on hydrogen fuel. You take that, and that's supposed to be a hyper efficient pleasure yacht.
Yeah, but shut up and take my money, though, right?
It's like the lowest, smallest scale of capital ship you can get too, like compared to it in the Retaliator or the Reclaimer are the smallest versions, and they are enormous costs to run.
They are
even now.
We use the example of an 890 jump. The capital grade ships can also be status symbols. There are people who just want to run around and say, "Hey, check this out. Check this thing."
Wallet.
Look at my wallet, look at my wad, look how successful I am in this game. And they're going to use it for that. And tourism, etc. I guess tourism is a very vague concept right now in SC. We don't know anything really. But the point is that capital grade gameplay is going to be an event. It's going to be an occasion, and depending on the discipline, will directly, in my opinion, dictate how regularly you see such equipment deployed. Okay. So hopefully that was that made some semblance of sense.
Yeah, no, I got it. And I think someone pointed out a little better, because I think I screwed up at it, which is like Mark Flat kind of said, like the gameplay that CIG wants versus the player sandbox. And I think you kind of hit that point of view. It's like, even for both, it's like it's an event. It's like, Xenothreat shows up, everyone wants to have that moment in Xenothreat, where Xenothreat shows up with, probably now it's like 2 Idrises. I'm sure when CIG has, with full capital ships in game, I'm sure they'll run like with an entire freaking fleet of, Idrises showing up.
Sure, yeah.
So you can just show up and be like, all right, cool, here's my Idris and my Polaris and my Perseus. And, and
it's going to be a big old slugging fest. And the next thing you know, you've got a full, battle. And that, for the record, is another aspect. And I'm going to take Algrid's description of like a javelin being a raid ship in an MMO. You will use that as a raid tier vessel, not something you use for every day. You have the NPC mission where you're going to require such heavy firepower, and you go, right, okay, boys, here's the SE version of a raid. Let's go. Let's get the gear and let's get out there. It'll take cat herding will be hours, but it'll be worth it.
It's the narrative equivalent of the old hero dusting off the chest and kicking open the chest and pulling out the legendary sword that they got.
Yeah, it's like, all right, we ain't playing no more. Let's go.
it's time, Tree, same question with you. Like the differences between, say, a CIG's sort of like gameplay, and then also like kind of the sandbox gameplay purpose of capital ships.
I think that some capital ships are going to offer more sandbox opportunity than others. Like, the Pioneer is a capital ship.
Mm-hmm.
That's entirely,
technically,
really going to be mostly
it's not. It doesn't have a size
really?
4. It doesn't have a size 4 component. I'm sure it will, because
Yeah, wait till they build it.
Yeah,
it'll get bigger.
It's the Polaris got components
bigger.
upsized and stuff. So yeah, but I mean, the Pioneer is meant for sandbox gameplay, and a lot of your haulers are sandbox gameplay. But Logan made a really good point that especially when it comes to the combat ships, like that is raid gameplay where you are getting together a bunch of people in your org, your group, the people you play with regularly, to achieve something that you couldn't normally, and like the capital ship that you could with a small team or by yourself. And the capital ship is just the embodiment of gameplay that is being greater than the sum of its parts. So you've got maybe got 12 or 20 people in your party, and you want to do something. Well, if you had 12 or 20 people in individual ships, or maybe heavy fighters with individual turret gunners, you wouldn't be able to do X. But if you bring in Idris with 24 people, you can do X if you coordinate appropriately, because this is a niche. Capital ship gameplay is there to cater to a niche, and it isn't people who are used to playing Eve and soloing their capital ships in Eve. It's a niche of the people in Arma or Foxhole or any one of those MMOs where you are combining logistics and organization in order to achieve an objective. And if you do it well, and you have the right people organizing it and coordinating it and doing all that, you can achieve something great. And it's immensely rewarding. It's one of the most rewarding experiences in gaming is achieving something great in those games that requires the coordination of many people, if not dozens. And you don't do that every day. You do that once a month, or something like that. And that's the raid style gameplay. You come together because this event is going on, or this opportunity is here, and you plan for it, or you plan ahead of time so that way you're ready for it. And that's the niche of capital ship gameplay. The Vanduul are raiding Oberon, and you have spent days or weeks with your org, getting everything situated, because that the CIG lore team's been dropping hints that the Vanduul are going to raid. Well, you and your fleet are there, and you're ready, and you're able to respond, and boom, you go and you do it, and it's a big Arma style event, and you've got 100 people in the Discord, and you get to the end of it, and you're like, God, that was freaking awesome, and it that's cool. But that isn't every day, and everyday gameplay is going to be centered around your Zeus Mark II, 2 to 3 people hanging out, having a good time, or soloing your cutter.
Mhm.
But Loken put it best. These are, for the most part, this is going to be raid style gameplay, other than the ones that really cater towards some sandbox opportunities. And I think the ones that are sandbox opportunities are not going to be using the ship to its full potential, but using things that it provides, like the Polaris. You're not going to be using those size 10 torpedoes all the time. That wouldn't be a good use of the ship. That'll be expensive. But if you use it as a mobile base, you can just wake up and 4 or 5 of you can go hop in the Legionnaire and launch and go down to the surface and go run some bunkers, and you're gonna have a great time. And you don't have to, you can use part of the ship, but not all the ship. But when you go use those size 10 torpedoes, that's that, and you bring on the full crew, so you have everybody ready and doing their part. You're maximizing the potential, and I think that's the real reward, is being able to maximize the potential of the people you play with via these tools.
Raider Ranger, same question for you.
Yeah. So I could be long-winded on this one, but
Well, go for it. That's the point.
from a practical standpoint, capital ships are a concentration of group gameplay.
Mhm.
It is what brings everybody together in one spot for a common cause to go do something. I think to nail down exactly what they're going to be good for is complicated, because number one, the future is still unwritten. We don't exactly know what kind of gameplay is going to be involved with it, but it also is very much role dependent. So as Loken said, he's really combat focused, and I'm down for that as well. That's one of the things that I'm looking forward to. But one of the questions I ask is like, why? Why would you get in a big fight with multiple capital ships? What would be the cause for it? Do you literally just meet in the hallway and say, we're going to have a fight? Or is there some kind of resource that you are competing over? And what is that resource, and why does it bring you to one spot where you're actually going to meet each other? Eve does a really good job of it, because the ships are still piloted by a single player, but they have systems and resources and bases that are a point of congregation where you're going to all fight over something and have a purpose and a goal, to take over, delete somebody's base star, or, take over somebody's system. From a game mechanic standpoint, I think the game, Star Citizen, definitely needs something like that at some point to bring people together and make them have that confrontation. But then there's also the other ships that have different roles. So, being able to go out and capture a lot of resources in a reclaimer. Again, group gameplay, you get to all kind of hang out. It's a little bit more chill, and you have fun, and you can use it as a, socialization setting to get a lot more resources. But again, why? Why do you want to gather that many resources? Is it simply to sell it and make money, or are you guys trying to build a big base someplace and you really need it? I think what we really need to kind of, I think everybody's going to want to get into big ship fights regardless. I mean, we're going to find a way to do that, because that's part of the blast that we've all been looking forward to. But I think it'll be really interesting to see how future gameplay unfolds. And this is where CIG has to kind of make everything tie together. They're building the components, but how do you make it a good systemic gameplay that has purpose and drive, that makes all these things happen for natural reasons? I think there's also some distinctions as to whether or not it's PvE versus PvP. Hammerhead is probably going to get together with a bunch of players, and if they want to do PvE, it's because they're going to go out and blow up a bunch of fighter ships that are around a mining area, like a mission or something along those lines. If they're going to do it on against other players, it's an entirely different thing. And that at that point, the capital ships are serving the role as kind of power projection. Again, I think it's in the short term, it's basically just going to be everybody getting together and having be a big social thing. The longer term, I think figuring out what we're going to do with these things really depends on the gameplay that they have yet to invent. The big thing for me, though, is like, I think CIG's biggest challenges with these things are going to be how to manage the contention with real world events. How do you get people who are busy with kids and lives outside to be able to collect in one spot, to be able to get on a capital ship and make it worthwhile? It's not going to be, it's going to be very impractical to continue to do this the way we are right now, where you have to go to wake up in a hab, everybody meets in the same spot, everybody gets the gear they need. under that scenario, it takes like, an hour or so just to get gathered on one ship, and that's really eating into everybody's playtime. They're going to have to tackle some of the questions, and this might be coming later on down the line, but like they're going to have to tackle the questions: how do people get on there? Do we have extra player slots that everybody keeps on a ship so we can all just jump in and go? That absolutely makes it a lot more purpose driven and gives you the time. It gives that time back to the group to play, to actually enjoy the game. Do you want to make it so that you're agent smithing, so that a dude has a ship with NPCs on it, and they're, he's on his javelin doing some easy missions with his NPCs, but suddenly a brouhaha pops up with another org, and they allow their org mates to kind of jump into the spots of the NPCs and turn it into a human group gameplay. Those are little details that I think have to be kind of worked into the equation as far as how they're going to be used in the future. I think we all have these ideas of what we'd like to do with them, but I feel like you kind of have to have the gameplay there to support it, and that's what we're kind of waiting on still.
Yeah, I agree. I think in general we're kind of in a weird position because there's definitely some intention behind CIG. You can see what they're talking about, what they're planning on doing, but it's also important to remember in mind that sometimes CIG has an idea and it just is bad. and they have to reverse course and fix the problem. Like, yep, this is not the way that we want to do it. Usually though, it's still the goal is still clear. It's just the execution is wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's the thing is there are not that many analogs as to what CIG is doing with Star Citizen. We can make comparisons to, Arma or Eve or whatever, but this game is not like that.
No.
There is not the mechanic that's so closely related to having, a hammerhead crewed with 8 actual players, and the logistics of getting there and doing stuff with it. And I think those are some of the unknowns that CIG is. I'm assuming they're thinking through it, but those are definitely the problems that are going to have to be solved that other people may not necessarily have solved already, because there's a combination of gameplay mechanics in Star Citizen that don't really exist elsewhere, and that creates problems that don't really exist anywhere else.
Yeah. I think a good example of that is the kind of the kerfluffle over things like master modes and the changes to FPS. A lot of people are, will pull out, be like, well, this is turning this into Destiny or Halo or some other games that people dislike. And the problem is that like even those games don't have the depth that Star Citizen has around those mechanics. Like FPS is an important part of Star Citizen, but FPS also has to deal with like health and regeneration and those sorts of mechanics on top of the gunplay and those sorts of things.
You raise an interesting point, because I've got this controversial opinion that a 6 degrees of freedom space sim was not a good idea.
I agree.
And the reason for that, I mean, it's a little too late now, but the thing is, every sci-fi show, maybe with the exception of Expanse, that most of us have grown up on, that we want to be able to play out in a game, did not work that way. They worked in the dogfighter style, like Star Wars, but even Battlestar Galactica, and
even Star Trek is just the 18th century ships fighting each other with broadsides, like at point blank ranges. And
the problem is that presents, I think there's a reason why a lot of these game development companies chose not to do these 6 degree freedom games, because they did not reproduce the experience that everybody was kind of looking forward to. And so I bring that up because that is one example of where you're right, where they might have had a cool idea in mind, but the execution becomes more challenging when you play it out in reality, and having to work around that becomes, part of the wizardry that they have to pull off.
Yeah. And it's just like any kind of video game and any kind of game development. No game is ever made. Or no game is ever just a copy. Every game is an iteration or change on each other. So you can't just be like, well, just do this, because just doing that doesn't necessarily work. Like CIG could do absolutely everything that Tarkov does. Like it could have absolutely everything that Tarkov has, down to the exact like UI screens. and it would still not be Tarkov because there's too many other things that are going on in the background of Star Citizen. Like Tarkov doesn't have a social mechanic, with things like reputation, the way it does works in Star Citizen. It doesn't have, salvage or mining or trading and same thing like Euro Truck Simulator. You can view everything exactly like Euro Truck Simulator, and it still doesn't work because Star Citizen is such an amalgam of ideas that it's gonna have ideas that just won't work sometimes.
SE is the amalgam of so many different game concepts into one new one, and it completely stands alone as far as I'm aware. I don't think any other game out there does what SE is intending to and already kind of does.
Yeah.
It just makes it freaking unique, which is both exciting and presents lots of gameplay options, but also so many problems, as you're illustrating.
It's a fantastic thing for people who are game developers. This is the kind of thing that like game developers dream about, where they can just be like, let's go, let's just do this and kind of like let's think on our feet, let's change ideas, let's go with crazy new ideas. We don't have to like worry about what's financially viable. We just have to make it work within this framework, and let's go. And I'm sure it's also
a better scenario.
Yeah, it's also, I'm sure, 100% a nightmare for game developers because it's like, oh god,
we've
scale.
Invent it now.
Yeah, the scale of everything is so bonkers. You don't just have to worry about FPS as an FPS designer. You have to worry about how that impacts the actor status system team, which has to worry about servers. You have to worry about your FPS gameplay and how it merges with the flight team and how ships will work and how scanning functions both in a macro and micro section, and then the reputation team. Like the amount of coordination the teams are going to have to do to make a lot of this gameplay work is insane. And looking at capital ships, this is the exact same thing. Reputation, AI, balance for combat, because like just the ships themselves are going to have to be balanced for combat. Resource system, repair, refuel, rearm. The quantum systems getting involved in it with like the economy and the stations that can store these things and use them.
Not even the issue of developing it, but then maintaining it. How complex the systems are. So if you make a change to one, how badly is it going to impact other systems in the future?
Yeah, because
I think is going to be challenging.
Because you have to balance. Like there's something you're going to screw up something here and there, and you want to keep it fresh. You're going to add like a new ship or a new AI feature, and that can throw off everything about everything else. Yep. So, I will kind of wrap this discussion up. We'll wrap this discussion up with the big question, which is capital gameplay both possible, and is it worth the effort? I'll start with you on this one, Shree, since I haven't started with you yet.
Say it again. Say the question one more time.
Is it possible? Is this whole thing possible? Is it just a pipe dream? Everything we've talked about, is this just a bunch of nerds talking shit on the internet, and CIG it's impossible. The CIG can never do this. And also, is it worth the effort that CIG is going to have to put into to make it function?
I definitely think it's possible, because so much of it is really kind of like with a lot of the tech that Star Citizen is doing for server meshing. It is not the first time, or just the tech that makes Star Citizen work. It's not the first time that this has been done before. It is the first time that all these things have been put together in the way that CIG is putting them together. And so capital ship gameplay, like, we don't have great examples of multi-crew space gameplay, but we have great examples of gameplay where lots of people come together that requires organization and structure and communication to achieve things that you can't really do by yourself or with smaller groups. And so I think that's the hard part is doing that, but in a way that fits within Star Citizen. And so I think this is sort of going to be a very iterative process, and it makes sense to me that the first step in that process is getting resource management in and getting that into a place where they like it, and then going from there, because that's the resource management is really the foundation of where the rest of this goes, because the resource management is what's going to impact the weapons and the performance and the flight and a lot of the other roles within capital ship gameplay. So I definitely think it is possible, but I get where you're going, because it is going to take a lot of work, and it's not only going to take a lot of work, but it's also going to be kind of like with the archetypes.
Mm-hmm.
There's going to be archetypes for capital ships. I'm not talking specifically about the archetypes, but they're going to have to tune the experience to different ships, because it's going to be in order to get them to feel how they want them to feel. You're operating your Idris isn't going to be the same as operating your Pioneer. They're going to share characteristics, but they're going to have to tune these things to get them to feel how they want them to feel, to get them to perform how they want them to perform. And so it's going to be a lot of effort. I think it's going to I think they have to do it, because they've sold these ships, and if they don't deliver on this experience, it's going to look really, really bad. And so, but I think that they've been planning on this long enough that they have a good idea. They've been concepting it well, that they have a good, I hate to use the word, roadmap for getting to the experience that they want.
Everyone drinks.
Yeah. Everyone drinks something really, really strong.
Yeah.
But it's also good that they, and people have been complaining about this for years, but it makes sense that they're waiting, because they need to get this right, and they need to be, they need to do their due diligence in executing this. But I think it's absolutely worth it, because no other game has ever attempted an experience like this.
Yeah, who
there's lots of stuff
to do this.
Yeah, no one has ever tried to do anything like this. There are very few games in space games that have players controlling capital ships, other than your RTS type games, or things like Battlestar Galactica Deadlock. And that is a niche, but it's a niche that hasn't barely been touched. And so I think being able to do that with your friends is a worthwhile. Fuck, I need to think of a synonym for endeavor, because poor John Crew. But
adventure.
Yeah, it's worth it, because we haven't had this experience before, and people are going to see it, and especially if Loken is doing this with his group of friends, the Pub and Plays Wednesdays, is on an Idris in Vandal territory, and you guys are just having a great time with your community. People will see that and be like, that looks amazing. I want to do that. That looks like fun. And it has the potential to really pay dividends, both literally and figuratively. These game designers get the satisfaction of being like, I helped create this experience that people are loving. And it's also going to make CIG money. Yeah. And I think they are aware of that.
Ranger, same question. Is this possible, and is it worth it?
Yes to both. Duh. I think is it possible? Yes, absolutely. First of all, like Tree said, and we kind of, everybody's kind of in agreement here. I don't know if anybody else is better equipped to do this than Chris and his crew at CIG, because they've got all this money, they got the drive, and they're crazy enough to do it, and they've already started it. We're in a weird situation where they have a lot of stuff that's been developed and they're on a path that I haven't seen any other companies really been able to get on, whether it's because of the lack of resources or support from the community, or just, the wow factor. But can they do it? This is something that I used to say years ago when Star Citizen was really in the early days, and people were complaining about how graphics intensive it was and how slow it was. I used to tell them, look, this game is not coming out anytime soon. You don't want to develop a game for the hardware that's out now. You want to develop for the hardware that's going to be out when the game is released. Because if you focus on, developing it for the local potato, it's going to be obsolete by the time that game actually comes out. In the same way, a lot of the capital gameplay and the mechanics that they're trying to do with this game, yeah, there are probably some technical challenges and some design challenges that are there, that are in the way of making this a reality. But you don't exceed the status quo until you do crazy things. You have to, you can say what you want about the guy, but look at Elon Musk, and particularly like Starlink and SpaceX in general. they're doing some really crazy stuff with their rocket down in Boca Chica.
Mm.
It takes someone with the right combination of resources and the crazy drive to be able to push the envelope forward and move the needle forward so that people do different things and grow beyond what is commonly accepted. And these guys are absolutely in that spot. And they've pulled off a lot of what they've wanted to achieve. It might not have been in the time frame that some of us were hoping. I have a lot more gray hairs and fewer of them, when we first started. But, I absolutely believe they will pull it off. And even if there are tech challenges that are in the way, that's stuff that eventually will be overcome,
Mm.
Yeah, I think they absolutely. So as to the question as to whether or not they should, yes, damn it,
Yeah.
we all want that. We
Yeah.
all want it. He's doing it because he is one of us geeks who's been watching Star Trek and watching these shows since we were kids, and this is we're not going to live to see it happen in reality. So the simulation is going to be the best opportunity, and they built the infrastructure with Star Citizen to present this and make it as an option, a possibility, and now they just have to kind of see it through. So yeah, they absolutely should be doing it, and I'm looking forward to it.
Awesome. Logan, same. Leave you for the last one. Should they do it? Or is it possible? And should they still do it?
If it were anyone else, if any other design house, developer, location, no, it's not possible. But it's CIG. This project to these developers who work at that company is for a lot of veteran developers that exist there. Their pierre de resistance. This is their crowning achievement in the industry. This may very well be for a lot of people the last game they work on, so they're going to make it the best option. This is the only this is a very rare set of circumstances that have come together to allow this level of project to go in. So, it's really a case of, go full bore, all in, or what's the point? Why, we have this luxurious position where we can dictate our time frame, we can dictate how long we take, we can dictate our the whole development process, and we're not necessarily beholden to any specific dates for release anymore. Specific. They have the opportunity to take their time with this. So is it possible? Yes, 100%. They have the talent, they have the resources, they have the time frame, they have the opportunity. Should they do it? 1000% yes, they should. As my colleagues here have demonstrated and very eloquently, it's going to be this is unique. The ability to have capital ship gameplay in a game that already pushes the envelope in every other way possible, with the amalgam of different gameplay styles that it knits together into one cohesive video game experience and continues to do so. They absolutely should do this. Yes, this is also something they've promised. They've sold the ships for it. They've hyped the idea of this gameplay up for years. They are, as you gentlemen said, they are just like us. We're big old game, freaking sci-fi nerds. We've all wanted to be that guy on the bridge of an ISD or that guy on the bridge of the Enterprise. Pointing at consoles and having your friends be the people do it. That's a dream for a lot of us out there. And also, it will make an already outstanding game just be that 20-year legacy of just, it will last, because very few, if any, other games will be able to replicate what SE is currently already achieved and is proving they can achieve. Chiefly among them, people said that static server meshing and the would never work out and it's not going to do it and it's a pipe dream. They're doing it. They've already done it. They've had people go through wormholes. I know this is of those of you who are in the know will know that static server meshing isn't necessarily a unique concept to SC, but it's proof once again that they've made a promise to deliver something. They've worked on the problem within their remits of their extremely complicated game and made it work. And they continue to do this. And 323 will be another opportunity for them to demonstrate they can do it, and they have done it. So yeah, absolutely should do it, because this will make money. This will be, you don't even need advertising for SC at this point, Oh, by the way, you want to get on a freaking giant, freaking 450-meter long super destroyer ship and blow some stuff up with your buddies? That's advertising, baby. That is a gameplay that nothing else can deliver. And
CIG does not need a marketing budget of hundreds of millions of dollars, because
No.
we're going to do it for them.
Yeah, you're damn right.
So
I mean,
yes.
look at what everybody's done so far just by buying their ships.
Yeah.
You know?
And it is. I will add to this. It's clear that this is made not just by Chris Roberts, but every 1,100 person, every person on this team, from the developers to human resources to the QA and everything in between, the customer service folks, all of them are big nerds for these sorts of things. And when they get to see, because you can, I've talked with several CIG developers. I'm sure many of us in this panel have as well, and know that they can, have felt their own personal passion, like how much they care about. We joke about John Crew cringing every time he hears the word endeavor is spoken. But I talked with John Crew at CIG at CitizenCon, and I mentioned it as kind of joking. He's like, I can't wait to work on that ship, because it's such a culmination of everything that him and his team have done over the course of 12 years at this point. And whenever it comes out, it'll be the kind of the crowning jewel of CIG's ship team, because it's everything. It's the everything ship. And that's the kind of thing, that's kind of the mentality and talent that comes into making Star Citizen. And I want to reiterate, because there's something I'm sure a lot of, I saw someone said like, well, Microsoft could make this. Microsoft wouldn't make this. There's plenty of people who could make it. EA could do this. Any big AAA company could. But they won't, because it doesn't make them money. CIG is investing hundreds of millions of dollars into research and development, which, what we've seen sometimes hits a brick wall and explodes. And then they do is they take what they learned, and then they continue to develop it until they get the right process. That is an expensive, time-consuming process, as we've experienced. That most companies don't have the kind of the stomach for that. So.
I'm gonna remake that Jurassic. So much worse. There's giraffes.
Yeah.
I'm gonna remake that Jurassic Park
idea.
Your scientists were too busy thinking, worrying about if they could. Asking if they could, or however that goes. But I'm gonna make it for developers and pointed at CIG, because that's exactly what it is. They were too busy thinking about whether they could, versus without thinking about whether they should or not. Because that's how we've gotten to this point. We can do this. Wait,
I'm glad they did.
I'm totally glad. I've been along for the ride since the very beginning. I bought, when they said that we could do capital ship gameplay, and that was the goal, is multi-crew, like this. That's been I have wanted that since playing Wing Commander, since playing Freelancer. I've wanted to do this with friends. Co-op game night is my shtick on my channel. The last 2 nights, or the last 2 days, I've spent like 8 hours doing Overdrive with 8 to 10 people from the community, because that's my bag. And if they're going to make it better, they're going to give us more stuff to do besides manning turrets and flying ships. Like, fuck yeah, worth every freaking penny and every day and year that I've been here.
When Loken and I were doing Overdrive with the crew, we brought the battle jump, but we also had a bunch of other like Corsairs and stuff like that. And somebody who's a regular on the Loken stream wasn't on the stream and happened to be in the same server as we did, commented about how when we showed up, like everything died. It was glorious, because it was like a bunch of large ships coming in together and just annihilating hammerheads because we were there. And it was the satisfying experience of like, this is what happens when you have a coordinated group of people in big ships working together to attack. It was like nothing could stop us. And it was...
we just rolled through it, and it was glorious.
Yeah.
Absolutely glorious.
Is that saved online someplace we can go watch that?
It's part of my, I guess now 32-hour stream on Twitch.
It's fun to be a part of, whether you're doing it first person or second person, watching on stream or on YouTube later. That is one of my favorite things to watch, is when a content creator comes together and they've got the comms with the community playing in the background, and everybody's they're communicating and they're doing stuff, and then afterwards everybody's laughing and talking. Oh man, that was so awesome! When you that's
those are the moments.
It doesn't get any better.
It's also
that's Pete right there.
It is also on Loken's stream, so you can watch it from last night. It's his last mod.
So you have Astro's perspective, who is you were in the storm, weren't you?
I'm in the storm. I may or may not have been playing Rule Britannia in the background as we fired thousands of missiles from our super yacht into
And I was busy
into
trying to not
terrorists.
crash the damned thing in asteroid belts. Got dicey there once or twice, but yeah, both perspectives are available if you want to take a look at those at any time. So,
but that's a great example of something like we just thought that an 890 battle jump would be fun to do, and it was, and it proves like that's the sort of gameplay that this sort of thing was for, and that's what kind of it was just serendipitous that we were talking about the capital ship gameplay today, because I was just like, that's great experience. And of course, obviously, everyone's talked about this. It should obviously be something they have to do because they've sold the ships, so they need to get it done. And I remember a couple of years ago when people were concerned that CIG may not be able to increase the player cap, and they were like, they sold these capital ships, and then now they're not going to be able to even use those capital ships. What's going on? And now here we are, a couple of weeks out of the CIG being like, yeah, we had 800 people on a server, on a shard, sort of situation. So it's fun to see this
in their first outing.
In the first outing, testing. The first test, public test, of this whole thing. So, but what was I going to say? Yeah, I think that's a good comprehensive look at the stuff we've talked about capital ships, and are they worth it? What like a good analysis of how they function now and how they're planning on functioning in the future, and a lot of the questions still up there. Like, because to be honest, none of us here know 100% how it's going to turn out. We're just based off of what we've seen and what CIG has kind of told us. But as we've seen in the past, CIG sometimes has to change their ideas and to make things work. But I do think we have a great discussion on. So
he uses my head like a crystal ball. He just shines it and looks.
Yeah, looks inside of it.
I just ask him, "What do you see up there, buddy? What are you looking at?"
We're gonna take a few minutes break, but I also would like to remind you to make sure you follow and subscribe to Loken Plays Tree 0311 and download the My Radar app. I use it; it's a really good service. I always like to point out that because we get a lot of storms in Texas, a lot of storms, and almost always I will get an alert from My Radar before the alert comes in from any other service, being like, "Hey, there's a bad storm coming your way," and 4 hours later, by the way, there's a bad storm coming your way from like every other service. It's like, yeah, it's because they're on top of it. They have their own satellite. They have their own direct feed. So you get a lot
free.
Better, so
it's free.
So
I use it along with some other weather reporting apps in order to go up to my pilots and be like, "Hey, before we leave, what the fuck is that?"
That's very cool. That's very cool.
So it's a weather service app for because people's like, what's My Radar? It's a weather service app. It's on
iOS, Android, Windows, Apple TV coming soon, CarPlay, Android Auto, Android Automotive. I don't know, Xbox. Did I say that already? Yeah.
Yeah. Because someone was asking also in the YouTube chat is like, are you still part of My Radar? And I was like, I think you're the CEO of My Radar, aren't you?
Yeah. I am the head geek, yes.
So we're going to be a few minutes. We're going to get something to drink and use the restroom and stuff like that. And so we'll be taking questions from you, the chat. So stick around. Don't go anywhere. All right, we're back with the question and answer session with Logan Plays, Tree0311, and Radar Ranger. We were talking about capital ships. So, that was me.
Indeed, yes.
Capital ships and how they function in the verse. Very good in-depth conversation. I think very enlightening, because I didn't even think about things like the NPC limitations when you brought that up at Tree. I'm like that's an example of the interconnected systems of Star Citizen and how that can affect even gameplay you don't think when you don't think about it. So
yeah, and it's not like it's something that CIG talks about explicitly, but these are things where it's like you got to connect the dots a little bit in order to set your expectations and manage them appropriately.
Mm-hmm.
And I it's one of those things where as I dug more and more into it, I'm like, they've said that they're going to simulate populations like this at this cost resources, and I have capital ships. I didn't buy them because I thought that I was going to be able to just pay for NPC crew with a few UEC, and I wouldn't have bought them if I thought that was a possibility. And so I think it's important as being an educated consumer and making a big purchase, you should probably look into these things and not set yourself up for disappointment before you make a big purchase. Yeah.
All right. Let's start with the first question. Alcinor asks, does CIG intend that on day one of their release that the Javelin Idris will be stripped holes?
Oh, this has been back and forth for a while.
Yeah.
Oh, it was on the web-page originally. That's what it used to say when the web-page first came out, that it was going to come without it. I don't think that's going to be more work for them to actually do, I think.
Yeah.
I think also the systems have matured enough now that they know they can probably get away with it. There's tons of other ships with guns that are just as badass. So I think it'll come with them.
Yeah.
I think that because it hasn't changed on the website, what's on the website is what you should plan on.
Yeah.
If they are going to change it, they'll change it on the website. You can use, like I do this all the time. I use Wayback Machine, and I look at the different versions of pages to see how they've changed. I do it for lore stuff, because they will I did it to compare the old Pyro comlink to the new Pyro comlink, and because they changed it. Because they can change those pages and change what it says. And so they have said that, and I forget what it says exactly now. And I want to say they clarified where it'll have, basic components, but it won't have weapons.
Mm-hmm.
And so you'll have to outfit it with weapons and such. We don't know, how to what extent, are you just going to have to buy the guns, or are you going to have to, will you be able to swap out turrets and such?
Yeah, we'll have the guns, but not the torpedoes or whatever.
Mm-hmm. But that is part of the lore for the Javelin and the Idris. These are the new Idrises now are a civilian-made variant, where we're not buying decommissioned ones essentially anymore. That's what they're selling. But the Javelins are decommissioned Javelins. They have been decommissioned and demilitarized. Yeah. And that is the point, is you are not getting a military spec Javelin. Because
it's like if you buy a tank in America. You can buy a tank in America. You're just not getting the gun with it. Or the shells.
Mm-hmm.
So
and that's just part of how they make it so that the UEE is always going to have the bigger guns and the better equipment. Is we are not getting, for the most part, aren't getting mil-spec stuff.
Yeah. But I do think that things have changed. So it might be that we get the stuff, because the reality is one Javelin, is it's already a money sink. Just hitting the turn on button is probably going to cost you like $1 million UEC to run that thing. It's got like a crew of 40 minimum.
80.
It might be 80.
80 max.
80 max. So yeah, its minimum is like in the double digits, and
It's 40, I think. Yeah.
yeah, it's insane. Even compared to like the Idris, it's huge. So that alone should be something that CIG can be like, yeah, that's a money sink in and of itself. Let alone the guns, because the guns are pretty standard. It's like size 8, I think, is the biggest ones, or size 9s are the biggest ones.
Yeah, the 2 quad turrets have 4 size 9s each, and then all the side and the bottom turrets, the main guns, are size 7s.
7.
And then you've got like size 4, I think, of the Gatlings on top of it for the, and so think about how big a size 7 gun is. Like, we only have the one bespoke size 7 gun, which comes with a ship attached to it in the game now. So think about how much money, would be just to get that outfitted in terms of guns.
Yeah.
And then filling it full of size 12 torpedoes, if that even comes with one. And so like it plays into, though, this is a raid thing. If you own the ship, okay, you own the ship, but you have to work together in order to finance just getting it combat worthy again. And I think that's a good thing. That's good gameplay. Especially because it also limits the, I'm going to be a pirate murder hobo with you're going to have a hard time getting the appropriate guns, because you're going to have reputation to get some of these things,
or just really good at salvaging.
Yeah.
Or pay to, because that's the thing, is that's the other part of the lore, is that these were sold to people who were the right people. It was the point. And so CIG is going to make it difficult if you are a pirate murder hobo to operate your Idris, or your Javelin, in order to get more weapons and resupply and all that stuff, because that's part of the game. That's how it's intended to be. That's the lore of the game.
To clarify, because Lady Space Patrol is saying like that the CIG mentioned back in as early as February of 2012 that they were going to have NPCs on capital ships. CIG always said that they intended to have NPCs be able to operate capital ships. The issue was always, and CIG was always cagey about this, can you solo a ship with a capital ship with NPC crew?
Yep.
And CIG has been back and forth on it, but mostly the general consensus that CIG has said is you can, but it won't be as effective, and it'll probably be expensive.
Yeah, Chris has explicitly said that having people would be better.
Yeah.
Then that's always the intent.
Yeah. So, and I think that's what Tree's trying to say, is like keep that in mind, that when they say something, they're very careful about how they're saying it, and CIG's always been careful about how they do it, because they didn't want to paint themselves in a corner with NPCs.
Exactly. Use the information you have to temper your expectations and to set manageable expectations, and do because these things aren't guaranteed. So okay, well, if you have if you have expendable income, then whatever, it's no big deal to you. But if this is a significant investment to you, you should make these sort of you shouldn't make these decisions lightly, and you should look at the information available and ask the appropriate questions. I'm not calling anyone stupid. I'm just saying, if you press buy without asking any questions and doing any research and weighing these things, that might not be the most responsible thing. And like, I'm sorry, not sorry. That's just the way it is. That is, being a responsible consumer.
And the other, back to the question with Idris, Idris will be stripped holes. I don't think Idrises were ever supposed to be stripped.
No, the Idris P is the demilitarized version. And it was never supposed to be the Idris wasn't supposed to be stripped or anything. It's just demilitarized is the word they used for making it so the M has more powerful weapons and more redundant components and stuff. How they are going to make that work is up to them. But that's the gist of it has always been that the Idris P has been, they've taken an M hole and made the teeth less sharp or less big.
And then they came out with the K.
Yeah.
But even the K, like the K doesn't give you everything that the M has.
Yeah.
The M still has more firepower.
I think for me, the thought is like, for a large org, money is not going to be an object. So I kind of feel like putting that. This is going back to maybe to the javelin in general. I kind of feel like stripping the ship of weapons for everybody could be potentially setting some people up for a disadvantage, whereas those large orgs would automatically be a step ahead because money is probably not going to be as much of an object for them, and buying the weapons is not going to be a big deal.
Yeah,
that's my view. And I think if they're really looking to make it fair, I don't know. It seems, they faced the fairness question with the M because there were only a limited number of them sold, and so they came out with the K, giving people an option so that they didn't feel like somebody had something that was no longer attainable by anybody else.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I kind of. You're right, Tree, in the sense, manage your expectations and plan for what's documented now. But I feel like they're going to be hard pressed to release a ship with that without weapons on it. I think there's contradictory information on it too.
There is.
So not only the website kind of said that, but then there was something else about how that's not the case anymore. So I don't know.
If it is, I haven't seen it. I'm just. I would just always stick with what's still publicly available until they say otherwise.
Yeah.
And if it's stayed for that long, it means they have chosen not to change it.
Yeah.
Where they've chosen to change.
I don't know though.
How many other things?
You look at how many ships on that grid are out of date. I think it's just a matter of picking your priorities.
That's the ship matrix. This isn't ship matrix information.
It's not so much the matrix, but it's the ship page. It's all on the same page. I'm pretty sure that description of the javelin not being armed isn't that in the description on the ship page?
It's still on the original. Hey, we're releasing the javelin.
Yeah. I mean, it's still using the original. It's still using the original concept image for that thing. They haven't replaced that yet. I think this is just a matter of them out of sight, out of mind. They're not working on it at the moment. It's not a publicly available ship, so why bother to go in there and make the effort to change it? But I guess we'll find out in a year or so.
Yeah.
Because it is easier for them to release a javelin and just have the hard points not have anything on them than it is for them to make a javelin P variant.
Yeah, I can see that.
Because that's the whole point is the P was them taking ships that had been decommissioned and basically reducing the caliber of their teeth and removing some teeth, and the equivalent of that for the javelin was we're going to take the teeth and you can outfit it how you want, but it's going to require some effort on your part. It's not like it's a bad thing, like that's gameplay, and it's
well, they're going to do that supposedly. That's the theory, that they're going to do that with the Bengal, and that's great because they're supposed to, again, we're kind of speculating here, but there was supposedly going to be one or two Bengals somewhere in the universe, and people were going to be able to find them, but they would be disabled, and you'd have to go through and build
that's
them
an entirely different scale. It's one thing to just you're parked at the hangar and we want to mount this on the hardpoint versus this ship is derelict and we have to patch the holes and get the power systems running again and repair the capital class components that are affixed to the ship and can't be replaced. You have to get them fixed again, and that was just a Chris Roberts speculating thing.
That was a Tavaran
point though. It's gameplay.
It's gameplay. It's good gameplay.
Yeah. So I was going to say that's a Tavaran kung fu criticism.
So. It was Tavaran kung fu that made the Bengal go derelict in the first place. It's that powerful.
I mean, if you look at the lore, the Naule are that powerful, so I would believe it. Speaking of Tavaran kung fu, I'm going to start with you on this one, Loken. The question is, imagine if CIG were to make an alien capital ship. What role would you like to see it, and from what race? So if you could see a alien capital ship, what kind of capital ship would it be, and what alien race would make it?
Good question. I would love to see an exploration vessel for an alien race, actually, gotta be honest. I'm going to go off of my usual track of going combat this, combat that. But no, I think an exploration vessel would be great. And which race would I like to see it from? God, honestly, I'd like to see Tavaran. Because I although I'm not a monster fan of some of their current gear, I like the overall idea of what they represent in their ships, and I think seeing a Tavaran capital grade vessel would be really, really freaking cool. So yeah, I'd love to see that personally.
Tree?
Well, I think this one's kind of obvious. I I'm just gonna put the link in chat again, and I'm pretty sure everybody in Paul's community has watched the video. And if you haven't watched the video, go watch my video. It's my crowning achievement when it comes to YouTube videos. I want my Anvil LHD, LHA equivalent. And like Paul has said, I brought the receipts from CAG in terms of what they have said, and the dang thing exists in the lore, and so I want them to make it. It has a great purpose in game, and that's what I want. I want my expeditionary base ship.
Yeah, that's cheating. That's not alien though.
That's not alien ship. We're asking an alien capital ship. If the alien capital ship was to happen, what role would it be in terms of exploration, combat, salvage, construction, whatever, and what race would it be made by?
I'm probably going to go with what everybody is talking about in chat, that if Tavaran something would be really cool, and which planet what system is that where they found that Tavaran base?
Cabal.
Cabal. I think it'd be really cool if something like that came found on Cabal, and it wouldn't have to be a big one. It could be a Polaris-sized capital ship, a lost Tavaran corvette, but it wouldn't. It would be specifically geared for supporting the Naule.
Mm-hmm.
It launches it's got a hangar for two prowlers. Yep, and they've got their Tavaran Kung Fu gym on it, where they practice their mixed martial arts.
Yeah,
they use their.
They have their churches, their temples are actually their training grounds. So yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, they get to swing their Tavaran boarding axe thing that what's his face made up?
Jeremy.
Yeah. That would be my thing. It's fast, it's sleek, it's stealthy, it's designed to launch a Tavaran boarding ship, because guess what, guys? The Prowler started out as a boarding ship. It just serves dual purposes. It's designed to hold a platoon of Naule for wreaking havoc on anybody, whether they're in a ship or on the ground. That would be cool to me.
The only addition I would have to that is that the Prowler has to attach to the ship upside down.
Oh,
so you have the ship, and then it attaches underneath it. So you have to board it through EVA, and then when it detaches and then turns around, like a like a batter, because just
in space there is no upside down.
Yes, yeah.
And in order to refuel the Prowler, the mothership essentially baby birds it fuel.
Yeah.
Wow, that went downhill.
Yeah. Radar Ranger. Yeah, your same question. Alien capital ship, and what race and what type?
Doesn't Benu Merchantman count as a capital ship, or no?
It does. Yeah,
it's
capital class.
I'm gonna go off script on my answer on this. I don't like the alien ships at all.
Okay.
They're too exotic for me, and so like exotic in the sense that they're maybe it's just because I'm an old guy and it's because of all of the sci-fi stuff that I grew up with, but I don't know. I find a hard time connecting with those funky looking ships. What's the cargo one that I'm drawing a blank on that's not out
Sulin?
yet?
Or the Rylan.
The Rylan. Yeah, Raylan.
Raylan.
Yeah, it doesn't really do it for me. I don't know. So I don't have any that I would really want to see or what it would be.
I wouldn't buy it. Yeah, because I agree the aesthetic doesn't fit me either.
Yeah.
But I think it's one of those things where it would fit a cool role.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You realize you just created the LHD, but a Tavaran version, right?
Well, the LHD would be meant to, this would be smaller. The LHD is meant to carry vehicles and be able to load them into a dropship, and whereas this is just it's giving a base for deploying the Naule, but no vehicles, no big cargo bay, none of all that stuff. It's just you're baby birding the Prowler, and you're taking it where it needs to go to, it's a special operations corvette.
Okay. Oh yeah. I'm gonna go off script because normally I would totally be down with the Tavaran stuff because someone said, wait, do the Tavaran have capital ships in lore? And not only do they have capital ships, they have some of the hardest to kill capital ships ever invented in space, because they had the phalanx shields, which in lore, at least the capital versions, would literally link their shields together. So like all of their power plants would be powering one shield. So you'd have, 5 capital ships side by side, all with their power plants charging a single shield, which would be impossible to penetrate. You couldn't bring down with any amount of firepower, not enough that would be physically possible. So, yeah, we just don't know what they look like at all because they haven't, done any concept art or anything, because they don't. Obviously, this was 500 years in the past in Star Citizen's history. So, but I'm going to go off script because normally I would say to Tavaran, but I'm going to say something that a lot of people have been hoping for, which is I would go with a Banu construction ship, a Banu crafting ship.
No, be cool.
So, like a base builder almost. So, all right. I'm gonna pause the.
I gotta say this really quickly because this is something we didn't cover in the chat. You mentioned crafting, and we were talking about purposes for capital ships. One of the things that I think we're kind of overlooking right now is the idea of crafting. People kind of think that they're gonna have bases to be able to do crafting. They've already talked about crafting stations. On a capital ship, one of the things you'd be able to do with this thing is store stuff on it.
Yeah,
and that actually changes the calculus a little bit, because then now you're worried about getting the thing destroyed or damaged. If you actually have tons of goods on it, if you use it as a crafting home base and you've got crazy resources, or you're hunting the systems for special resources to craft something and you do it on the ship, that's just something I thought would be kind of fascinating to bring up, because it provides a new reason to not risking your ship and to be worried about taking it into a confrontation so you can get it out, or having the bad guys disable it so they can board your ship and take it.
Yeah. I mean,
I had to bring that up because that's a big thing gameplay wise. That
we kind of mentioned it, but one of the things that I was going to say is, like, one of the things that I always see the capital ships kind of being used as is a kind of like a disruption ship. So in the sense that like they're probably, to take down a capital ship will probably require specialized tools, either organization, time, or just a lot of firepower. And you don't want to unorganized attack a capital ship. So I could see capital ships being used as a means of, like, jumping into a system, maybe one or two jump into a system to, just clear the path for other groups, like maybe less defended fleets, because you show up in Pyro with your, Polaris and your Idris, no one's going to want to fight you because they're not prepared to fight a Polaris or an Idris. So they're just going to fall away because they don't want to have to deal with you. Because if they go after you, it's just going to be a pain. And so while they're trying to prepare enough resources and stuff to take you down because they want to get your juicy stuff, or maybe salvage your Idris, and now it's their Idris, your convoy of whole seas can slip through the system and get out before they show up.
Sacrifice.
Yeah, but I mean, even then, like, as long as they're out before they're ready to go, it's that kind of like that gamble. But I could definitely see it as a like you drop a rock in a pond and the waves ripple, kind of like that ripple effect of, like, the idea is like to push away an enemy just for a brief moment. So, all right. Next question comes from Steve the Dancer, who asks, how do you feel that when your landing gear is down, your speed is limited to 30 meters per second? Is it?
Not anymore. No.
No.
They got rid of that in like 3.0, I thought.
Yeah, I don't remember that, because I could still go really fast with my landing gear down.
Yeah.
I forget my landing gear sometimes.
Yeah. I'm watching people on a stream going, raise your gear. I'm a pilot, so to me it really bugs me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, fair enough.
It's a master modes thing. Oh, so they've brought it back.
Ah.
I'm okay with it, I've got to be honest. Reminds me to put it back up.
Yeah, really.
It should cause
That's
drag.
Probably why they did it. Probably why they did it.
And it used to be the case, too.
In atmosphere, it makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In space, don't have that in space.
Yeah, true.
I could still imagine, the logic behind it would be, your landing gear is designed to arrest hold your weight, but it's probably not designed to move back and forth. So it's probably not the most sturdy left and right. It's probably designed to wiggle a little bit because of wind and other things like that when you're down. So if you're in a dogfight and you're pulling insane numbers of G's in space, your ship is going to move one way, and your landing gear might because it's 0G will move with the direction of force, and it will just bounce back and forth and might break as a result because of the intense G's. So the idea
that is absolutely a
safety
problem on
measure.
real airplanes. If you take a turn too quick and you put too much weight on the lateral G forces, the gear will snap off.
So the idea of having a safety mechanism built in ships where it's just nope, you can't go fast. Raise your gear so you don't break your landing gear.
I can see that. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Unknown Guardian asks, have you been asked how everyone's doing yet? If not, how's everyone doing? How's everyone doing?
I'm doing pretty good. All right. Yeah. Just just chilling. Truth be told, so it's always fun to talk about large ships.
True.
And anything SE related. Yeah. How about everyone else? Everyone okay?
Doing good. Slowly getting things done around the house. So does that feeling of accomplishment, yes, finally had this thing done. Like today, I literally finished 10 minutes before we were supposed to start setting up, but I did.
Sound panels.
Got all
Nice.
my
Oh,
sound
very
panels
nice.
out.
Wow, fancy.
You fancy
Those
pants.
boxes have been sitting in my office for months.
One of those. I'll get to it when I get to it. Jobs.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I've got that's the thing where I've got this chair which is old, and I bought a brand new chair at the end of the last year, and I just haven't bothered putting it together, and it's because it's
dude. Get on with it. Get the new chair in, man.
It's been holding my 3D prints from when I'll print the thing. I'll just put it on the chair on the box that is the chair, and it's just
I have an armchair that serves that purpose in my room. It just serves to just store things.
Yeah,
it's not actually a chair anymore.
How you doing, Radar?
Oh, I'm doing great. I mean, I just spent the last 2 hours geeking out with my people about capital ships. How can you go wrong with that?
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, work is fun and crazy, but otherwise, things are great.
I'm doing okay myself. I'm kind of coming well over 24 hours of streaming. The stream has been on for about 33 hours, and I've -8 for my me sleeping because I still had to stream up, but I wasn't actively streaming. And oh gosh, what I was going to say. And it's April coming up, so for me that means that school is basically over because I teach seniors, so most of them have. Once they get back from senior spring break, they have checked out because they've gotten their applications in. Many of them have got their acceptance letters. All they got to do is make sure that their grade doesn't slip below a certain level. So they show up and they're like, what's the minimum amount of work I can do today and still pass? I'm going to do that. And we've got testing coming up for this entire month for everybody else. So basically school is shut down for half a month, and then the end of the year happens. So I'm kind of on that downward slope of just I just need to fill out the last little bit of forms, and I'm done for the year. So,
dude, your wife's book just came out too, didn't it?
Yeah, it's coming out on the 20th. April 20th is when it's coming out. It's available on Amazon and Barnes and Noble. It's called Panic Eyes. So
Pre-ordered.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's by Paul Shelley, which is my wife Camilla. So. All right. Unknown Guardian asks, if CIG actually lets players tow home a wrecked Bengal carrier, how many player/org-owned Bengals should there be? Personally, I'd say there should be countable on one hand, but more than one. So 1 to 5. I'd say it's reasonable.
Yeah. A Bengal is not a thing that the UE is going to just let leave unless it's in dire circumstances. You know, it's a kilometer-long mega carrier, for heaven's sakes. So yeah, 1 to 5 at probably maximum. It could create the competition to fight over it as well.
You know what though? It's kind of hard to put an arbitrary number on it when there are probably conditions that would make it ideal or optimal. Obviously, if Star Citizen winds up getting millions of players, having They should be rare for sure. You
Okay,
want,
fair enough. Yeah.
and make them fun and a rarity, and you should be really kind of thrilled to be able to see one and go up against it. But like, if there's a bazillion players that are jumping in the game, in a couple of years, and there's room for it in the sense that there's a couple of big alliances of a bunch of different orgs that get together and try to man them, and it generates cool gameplay. Yeah, it's not so much the arbitrary number, because it depends on the base, like how many systems do we have, how many players are there in the game. But yeah, they should definitely be rare and a surprise. You want to have that wow factor when you see them.
Yeah,
Yeah.
maybe it could be something that kind of occurs, like, say, for example, because I'm assuming, and correct me if I'm wrong, that once SC is actually on doing its thing and it's existing as a game, as its live release, that they'll have a sort of a similar system to, like, how Helldivers has sort of a narrative theme that making things happen. So it could be very occasionally, maybe a massive conflict has occurred in the UE, and there just happens to be a Bengal that some scout someone has said, and that might just then be the CIG's option to go, okay, we'll insert another one, just so they can fight over it,
Yeah.
bring it. It could be a narrative, really big narrative sort of gameplay aspect, which could be quite fun. But yeah, I take Radar's point actually. Shouldn't mess the, we don't really know how many it could be limited to, but yes, very rare, amazing find. Oh my god, it's a Bengal type situation.
And with that,
So-
there could easily also have things like literally a narrative situation where the UE has lost a Bengal in, Caliban or some Vanduul system, and they're like, if you bring back this carrier to UE space, we will pay you 2 billion credits to return it, because it's not just like a matter of the equipment, but like a point of pride to return. It's like, Roman legions returning the standard is a big deal. Return the Bengal, return the flagship, that was lost, sort of thing. So
Yeah, that should be, in my opinion, like top level raid.
Oh,
Like
yeah.
the ultimate for a large org. But I also think that the number that are available should be believable in lore, because the Bengals only been around for 80 years.
True.
They've only been in production for 80 years, and they take probably years to a decade to produce. The UE probably only has, at most a couple dozen. So I think if we're gonna expect, like, I would say 1 to 3 at max. But I think the way that you scale that sort of gameplay, so that more people are able to take part in it rather than just the Uber orgs, is to not only do that for the Bengal, but do that for cruisers and battle cruisers, and have more of those be available. So if there's 3 Bengals that are derelict in, one in Virgil, one in Tiber, and one in Caliban, that you have to find, then maybe you multiply that by 4 for battle cruisers and multiply that by 4 for cruisers. And so, okay, maybe, only and you not only have orgs constantly competing for control of these Bengals, and of course the escort carrier that we have now seen. But, if you do that, so that way, okay, well, your org isn't test, but you guys can ostensibly find and control a cruiser, because there's more of those available, and more likely for those to have gone derelict in that time frame. I kind of like that idea, because it makes it believable in lore, because that they would be more willing to protect a Bengal during the retreat, and maybe sacrifice a cruiser or battle cruiser holding the line, in Tiber, because that's what happened.
Yeah.
They fought that retreat, going into Virgil, and then Virgil got overwhelmed. So those are good narrative plot lines to build that around. I also like, I don't know if that was in the question, but I don't think we're going to be towing it. I think that's part of the gameplay. Is
you gotta fly
you
that.
have to,
Right.
yeah, you got to smuggle everything you need to get that thing up and running into Vanduul held space. That's what makes it that much more exciting. You can't just find it and we're gonna tow it back. I mean, God, that would be an endeavor in itself. If I did it again, fuck.
Yeah.
An
But
angel
can
just
you
lost his
imagine the logistical challenge of, hey, we found this. Now we have to organize the org to, we have to figure out what we need, and then we have to figure out how to get it here with the Vanduul prowling about.
Oh yeah. It's almost
Like
almost
that-
certainly these are going to be in Vandal space. Like that's the only way they would they would have narratively, and that's a good gameplay mechanic. It's like you have to go
does that get
into the
any
system, which is entirely not yours, that you're
Right.
going to be attacked the entire time.
You know, I've got a counter thought to this idea of scarcity. Like, obviously, they should be scarce in some way or another. But if you think about it, if they become a symbol of prestige for any org, what you could build off of is, instead of scarce ability, the replaceability. Like, if you are lucky enough to get one, you're probably never going to want to take it out unless it's really necessary. So if you imagine you wind up, a couple of small orgs wind up getting them, you're only going to bring it out for that big old battle, and you're really going to hope that you're not going to lose. My fear of having like one or two is that,
No one will use it.
somebody will take it out. Yeah, they'll either never use it, or whenever it does come out, the entire system's going to gang up on them and try to take it and destroy it or whatever.
I could also imagine
that's
those
the
sorts of
risk reward.
things. I could also imagine those things not being available in UE space. You fly that thing. It would be like finding like a derelict or lost aircraft carrier from World War II that sunk in the Philippines or something, and then deciding to like pull it out of the ocean and then just sail it to San Francisco Bay. Like you're not. That's not going to happen. You're going to be intercepted long before that, and you're going to be told to stand down. Of what the fuck are you doing on a military ship? It's just sailing into.
Thank you for finding this. We will take that back now.
Yeah,
We'll take it from here.
yeah. So, raise the Yamato and make it a space battleship. Yes, exactly. Yeah, like that sort of thing.
This is the best plan. I approve this plan.
Damn, someone took my idea.
But I do think that like having multiples, like having things like the Pegasus or battle cruisers or javelins, I can imagine there'll probably be more wrecked javelins than there are active javelins out there, since it's been around for 300 years. So
that seems far more logical.
For sure. Yeah, it just scales up based off the class of size of the ship, and there's more of those available. But like, some of those systems are really big, and they're big battles there. And it's like Tiber is called the grinder for a reason, because they've been fighting over Tiber and Virgil and sending, the UE's been sending forces in there ever since they fell. So there's gonna be lots of salvage, valuable salvage, but B, opportunity to, well, shit, we can get this back up and running. Or someone could, and I'm going to sell the location to them.
Well, I could also see a compromise. CIG could just, instead of having it be the Bengal, it could be an older carrier that's been around, that they just come up with an older carrier that's just you can use. It may not be the Bengal, but it's like almost as good, sort of situation. Because that would also make more logical sense in the lore and in terms of narrative, and it would also be a unique thing that players would have to construct and use. So it's like it's a different
a vintage Aegis war crime. Nice.
Yeah.
There you go.
something that would be gameplay purposes too, because you the second it pops into your view, it's like, oh, that's a player. Like, no NPCs had that anymore. Like that's a an Odyssey class carrier from 300 years ago. The only people who carry those now are players who found them and built them and rebuilt them. So
where did you find an indefatigable class?
Yes, exactly. All right. Nakaj asks, Stanton to Pyro is only a medium-sized jump tunnel. Can you even use that with capital ships? We've talked about this extensively, but so I'm not going to go into deep depth. But Xenothreat can, so maybe.
Retcon.
We just don't know where CIG is going to draw the line. Maybe it's Idris and Javelin can't make it through.
Maybe they'll take the size idea and completely change it from being size to being stability. Like how the size is based off of how stable the jump point is, and whatever. So, and
there are large jump points going into Pyro as well. So just not from Stanton. So who knows how they're going to work it. But ostensibly they're getting an interest through. We just don't know where that line is, or how gray that line is, or what the ability for players is to move the line.
Unknown Guardian asks, I know this has been discussed several times before, but to freshen up everyone's in my particular memory, what's the role would an anvil cap ship have, in your opinion? I'll start with you on this, Radar Ranger.
I definitely I would want it to be a battle or combat. So like cruiser cruiser
Okay.
would be great because we've already kind of talked about how much combat's really fun and a blast, and I think yeah, that would be good. They already have an explorer kind of in the Carrack, and we don't have any really cruiser ships in the
No.
game at the moment, do we? So that would be a good slot to fill.
Other than the like Squadron 42 blurry background shots that we're pretty sure are cruiser, maybe because like there's a name of
Go
a,
watch Jail's video. Jail
Yeah.
did a great job.
Yeah, I saw that. That was
Jail-
phenomenal.
Jail does a great job of languages and the little details that everyone else misses that he obsesses over and make sure
Thank you, Jail.
four crossroads 5 and he's the one who actually came up with the idea of saying like, you know, we're not necessarily we're talking about jump points because he famously says, I don't believe in medium jump points. The existence of medium jump points because he thinks it's going to be the classification system is going to completely be altered when they come up with the idea of what really is going to happen. So
Yeah.
Tree, same question for you. What do you think the Anvil cap ship is? And I'll be right back.
Drop in the link in chat. Watch my freaking video. The Anvil cap ship is going to be the one that they've already talked about in the lore from the Liberator transmission comlink when it was released. Anvil makes large-scale troop and vehicular transports
Yeah, but
for use.
what about like what's the carrier, the mini carrier one that isn't out yet?
We don't
Liberator.
know what that is.
No.
but, you know,
What's it called? The name of it? No, they have one that's a concept ship now.
Yeah, the
Liberator.
Liberator.
Liberator. Yeah.
The Liberator is a civilian ship made for civilians.
Got it. Okay.
You got to read the language very, very specifically, but it specifically talks about how Anvil is famous for the fact that they make massive warships and large-scale troop and vehicular transports, and that's where the Liberator gets its sort of role and lineage from those ships that Anvil makes for the UE military, and the UE Marines operate their own ships and they have their own fleets. They even have their own Bengals. But they also, would use these ships for invading planets and attacking planets. And if you look at the lore for the Valkyrie, like that's what the Valkyrie is designed for. And the Valkyrie is not a long-range ship. It's designed to be dropped from a carrier that is a troop and vehicular transport. So this is my shtick because I lived this. It is, people don't realize it, but this class of ship is one of the most common in the larger fleets of the world. Everyone has them. Unless you are a micro country that has nothing but coastal defense vessels, everybody has these ships because no one can afford super carriers and because they're extremely versatile. So that's what I want, and I made a video on it, and I'm very proud of that video. But I want the ship. Damn it! I don't care how many ulcers it costs John Crew. Make the ship.
And to back that up. Me and Tree actually talked about this because his idea of the LHD and my idea of a Ro-Ro ferry are both kind of match up together. And CIG's big on doing one ship that can do multiple things, like a civilian version and a military version, so on and so forth. So, nice. What is that?
Celica? Yeah.
Whoa.
This is the oh gosh, what's the company that makes these? Shit, I can't remember the name. But yeah.
Nice.
Wait, I zoned out. What is that? What is that from?
Aliens.
Alien. Yeah. I can't
It's a
remember the name.
Suluco, isn't it?
Celica.
Sulaco.
Sulaco, yeah.
That's it, yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. Wow.
It's not JRDF. But there's a company. I think it's the same company that makes the Star Trek ships. Can't remember the name of them, but yeah.
That's right on the tip of my tongue. I've got a couple back there.
Oh, that's Infinity.
Is it Infinity?
That's the UNSC
Yep.
Infinity right there, yeah.
I didn't know if that was the Pillar of Fire or the Infinity because I know they're very similar. So,
If that.
but
Wait. Who are the old school people who recognize what this is?
hey, Space 1999.
Yeah.
The Eagle.
All right.
Yeah.
My people. This thing was cool. This was pretty badass back in the day.
I wonder if CIG's going to kind of have their own version of the Eagle because they kind of have them, but I could definitely see that in the future. So nice.
Whoa. This is definitely show and tell.
But yeah, I was going to say. But yeah, so I think it doesn't just make sense like because of realism, but it also makes sense because of gameplay. Because we all know, as we said way earlier, the larger the ship, the faster it can go, or the longer it can go into quantum. So it can be more efficient in quantum travel. That was a gameplay decision they wanted to make. So at some point, you're going to want to not just move yourself, because if you just want to move yourself, you can just get on a Genesis. But you want to move yourself and your Aurora and your stuff with you to a location. And you're going to need a vehicle that can do that. And the Liberator can do that for, like, small ships, but not for the Valkyrie or the Cutlass or, the somewhat larger ships. And both governments and civilians would need that sort of ability. So it makes sense in gameplay also to have this sort of movements that doesn't require you to take a Kraken out, because that thing's, as we explained in this video, it's going to be expensive. So
look at this big jug of fuel. I'm gonna
something more efficient than a capital ship, but big enough to haul large things. Something like a Hull C or Hull D, but not. They can also carry people, so it makes sense. So, all right. Oh, Loken, Anvil capital ship. What would it be? Because I know what you want.
It very much echoes what these gentlemen have suggested, but I'm going off of what one of my community has suggested many times for an Anvil capital ship, Minty. We would like it to be called the Anvil Hammer, and we want it specifically to be able to fire the nails. So we want to use it as a drop. Oh no, the drop pods that the UEE use for firing, like so ODST style. So they're called the nails. We want it to be called the Anvil Hammer. And yes, all the above.
Yes. See, for me, it would be
as on the nose as it gets.
Oh, absolutely.
I love it.
You could also they could be cheeky about it, and it could be called like the Anvil Sledge or the Anvil like some other word for hammer that exists. Like some like archaic word for a hammer, and then it drops nails.
Yes, it would be glorious.
The one thing I would want to see is a Corvette, because we need to fill out the Corvette class a little bit more. But where the Polaris is a DPS boat, I'd want something like a tank, something that's like a gunslinger.
Oh yeah,
like give me an Anvil capital ship, the Corvette ship that's just a single rail gun with maybe some anti like picket fire. So like just take the railgun off of the Idris and turn that into a ship. no fighters,
so a Strident class frigate then basically.
Yeah. So something that's designed to just go up there and punch holes in your face, and you can take a lot of heat hits back. So when you try to chase the Polaris after it launches its torpedoes at your big ship, you run smack dab into the Anvil that is this ship that will just blow holes into you. So
be glorious.
Yeah. So the Anvil Fist, yeah.
I'll never forget that line in the Polaris brochure, and they'd say the new line of RSI Corvettes.
Yeah,
right? Multiple
vets,
and multiples. So I am gonna just hold on to hope that they make more, Corvette size ships in that class, because whereas like the Zeus size ship, 2 to 3 people is going to be your peak day-to-day daily driver with you and a couple friends. I think the lowest size capital ship, that's really going to be usable on a fairly regular basis is going to be that Corvette class, like a Polaris, and have a lot of flexibility or some things that are more bespoke in terms of their role. And I hope they do more like that.
Mm-hmm. Someone said, my idea isn't that the Idris, isn't that the Idris that ship? No, the Idris is too big. I'm talking about something that would take 7 people, like 4 to 6 people to operate. The Idris requires
to get rid of the hangar
10.
and all that extra bullshit. You could make the Idris a whole lot smaller.
Yeah, it's just a lot of bullshit on an Idris. It's because it's designed as a frigate and a multiple like I'm not talking about
carrier, basically, isn't it? Of sorts.
Yeah, it's designed as like a it's a role. It fits its role for narrative. It's supposed to be kind of like a patrol ship. It's kind of like an interior patrol ship, and so it's got all the little amenities where bringing long patrols and stuff like that. What I'm talking about is something that doesn't have any bullshit. It is just there to kick ass, and then it goes home. You know, it's there to punch holes into you. And when it's done stapling you, it goes back and sits down and thinks about what it did, rather than having to sit there for days on end. So, the Polaris, but not torpedoes. Yes, that's what I'm saying. I'm saying a tougher gunslinging version of a Polaris. That's
not torpedoes, not hangar, not vehicle bay, gun.
Yeah. The anvil gun. That's what I'm looking for. The anvil gun. All right. Next question comes from Unknown Guardian, who asks, what type of non-combat capitals could you see being created by CIG, and which manufacturer would those be made by? We actually have a lot of them.
Argo.
Argo, yeah.
A capital. Just straight up, needs a cap vessel. They could do anything. They could do construction. They could do salvage.
Pubathon complete.
Yay!
Hey, there you go. Yeah. There's so much civilian logistical work and things that could be done in this regard. I mean, hell, I was going to say sort of like I guess a capital grade sort of tourist vessel, like a cruise ship, basically.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't exist yet. You've got something like that in Elite Dangerous, the Orca, I think it's called, something like that. But yeah, there's loads of different places that you can go. What do you guys reckon?
I'd say the same thing. Like Argo is the big one. Like the Argo refinery ship, an Argo like I can imagine an Argo like refinery ship that's just like a floating refinery and construction dock. Like a something you'd push into an area that's like doesn't have a station but needs a station. You just push this thing in there, and it just stays there.
Yeah, that would be cool. Yeah, there were a couple of ships like that in the UNSC. They were they're called Anchor 9, I think, like that.
Yeah,
they're literally just a floating dry dock, basically, for refinery of materials and then just repairing UNSC ships. That would be so cool. But it just painted in orange.
Yeah,
with Argo on it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What do you think, Radar?
Oh, you're all going to laugh at me, but I would love to see an Origin combat ship.
I'd love that.
Yeah.
I'd be down. I'm not going to lie.
Like, there'd have to be some big... Paul, you'd have to sit here and think of a big lore reason as to why they would suddenly decide to make the jump from luxury to combat. Like, what was the drive for them to do that?
I can already tell you, they make all of the engines for the capital ships. All of the engines built, like the Bengal engines, are built by Origin. So
increasing conflict. They need to be able to enter a larger market with recurring sales for weaponry.
They have like military contracts. So yeah.
The same thing principle like in for real, like Rolls-Royce make engines for military vehicles. Right. Okay.
Yeah, it's that kind of thing. They make all of the Aegis capital class and all the RSI capital class engines, or at least
they do it under the Origin name, or is it under a different name? Okay.
They do it under the Origin name. So. Like, I don't think right now it does, but it would eventually, like when you looked at them, it would be like an Origin, JumpWorks, X45 engine housings and stuff like that. So,
yeah.
I mean, you could justify a combat capable Origin ship in so much as like being a VIP transport for extremely high value clients that need to be able to defend themselves from whatever may come their way, over and above what a 90 jump can already do, just out of, just off the top of my head. It's a bit like the Starship equivalent of an armored, limo, like the one that the president uses, and can have that as Origin.
I got to self-promote here a little bit, because in 2019, we sent up a satellite into orbit, and it had the Star Citizen logo on it, right?
Nice.
We have another one going up in October and another one going in February. I'm going to put John Crew's name on it if he gets us an Origin combat capital.
There we go.
His name is going to be in orbit. The challenge is out.
That's a challenge. You forever in orbit there, John, or for a long time.
You better be watching, John.
People are asking about the Air Force One equivalent in chat, and that question has actually been asked to the lore team, and they have said that the Imperator actually has like essentially a fleet of various ships that will be used for different reasons. So I mean, I could totally see a 600i whatever that's all beefed up and
The
has
725A or whatever, you know.
yeah.
Ooh,
Mhm.
yes.
Yeah.
Rather.
So my answer, and I'm going to put the link in chat, is I like Loken's Argo idea because if there's anything I love more than Anvil LHD, it's Argo capital class fleet support ship. And so the Altor class replenishment ship from Star Wars kind of embodies what I think would be really cool for Argo to do the step up from the Crucible. And I know Crucible owners are like, no, I want my ship to get capital class, growth, blah, blah, blah. I think that if Argo would be the really cool way to do this sort of fleet support ship, it can not only fuel your larger, your medium to large ships, it can also do those repairs of out in the field, and it can also do the rearm thing. So you've got big old cargo bay with drones for bringing missiles and whatever else out. It's a mix of your Vulcan. If the Vulcan and the Crucible had a baby, and that baby was Baby Huey and became a capital class in orange. That's what I want.
Glorious.
I don't know what this question is. How would each of you make cap ships expensive and need a crew? We already kind of talked about that.
I think we covered that, yeah.
CIG kind of already does that.
I was gonna say, how do we need to make them expensive? They already are.
They already are expensive.
I mean, there's operational costs, fuel costs, paying your employees, paying for weapon replacement,
storage cost.
Yeah.
Think about that's the thing is you're gonna have to be able to maintain your components on your ships. Whether you do it or you have it done at the station, it goes down in the hangar and comes back up 5 minutes later, and now your component is no longer at 75% durability. It's back at 100. Whatever that job costs you. Well, that cost is going to scale. Going from a small component to a large or capital class component. And capital class ships are not only going to have larger components, but those components are going to be, they have more of them. They have redundant systems. So all that maintenance is just going to, it isn't a straight line. It's going to be exponential in terms of cost just for maintenance.
Yeah. The other thing is you can't underestimate fuel costs. Like that large fuel tank will get you very far, but it will cost a lot to fill it back up again.
Yep.
Unless you have the ability to cycle or to gather and refine it, and even that's going to cost you the time and effort that you could be using for other things.
And fuel that couldn't be going to something else.
Yeah. Max had a quick question. Do you think that we should have capital ships that could carry multiple capital ships? Fun fact.
I want the Infinity as much as everyone.
Yes. Fun fact. The Bengal carrier can hold an Idris in its docking, in its hangar bay.
Oh, home. Really?
It just couldn't
can't fit through the door.
It can't fit through the door. The Idris couldn't fit through the door to get in there.
But that's how big the hangar is.
Yeah.
Wow. That is gargantuan. That thing's a monster. It's a monster of a ship.
You could almost certainly, I could almost guarantee you that it'd be able to fit multiple Polarises in there.
I was gonna say you could have a wing of Polari in there.
Yeah.
Oh my day.
What's the one from The Expanse that the Rocinante gets pooped out of? Yeah. That and the Infinity, the way that those do that's just so cool.
Yeah. I remember seeing that cutscene in Halo. It was a Halo 4 where it just went and then just multiple
hold on, let me just pass a Corvette here.
Yeah.
Just enjoy these 10 Corvettes. Have fun.
Yeah. You're just like, damn. It's that's cinematic as hell. So what I'm trying to say, CIG, is there needs to be a scene somewhere in some Squadron 42 episode where the Bengal opens up and like several squadrons of Perseus is just vomit out of a and hammerheads vomit out. All right. Fairster asks, we have historically had lots of ships flight ready, yet not. We have historically had lots of ships flight ready that don't yet fulfill their true purpose. What would you personally prefer to see these capital ships released as soon as modeling is done to see what players can do with them, or would you prefer to hold completed assets back a little longer until associated gameplay can catch up?
Good question. Very
Tree?
good question.
I'll start with you on this one.
Hold. Stay the course. We are this close.
Yeah.
Resource management is so. Here's the thing. Resource management is not getting released piecemeal. All they have publicly stated the goal is to have every ship ready for resource management when resource management releases. That's why they've been doing all this work, and they just describe it very vaguely in the monthly reports. That way they don't have to specifically list each ship that got this particular resource management work done to it. It's also a systemic thing. So it's not people make a big deal about, oh, it's got to be so much work. It is a lot of work, but it's not as much work as you think to add component bays to ships that already had them. They just had to had the door. They've been getting ships ready for this for years. It's not new work. But that's the biggest part for capital ships, is having resource management, because like the guns are there, these other things are there. But the biggest part of it is being able to have resource management and the damage systems, and have the gameplay actually mean something. I think that the only other thing to do with that is like someone put this in the comments, one of my the podcast videos, about 1.0, and if they don't have all the ships in there for 1.0 that players should ride. And I'm like, well, what if the gameplay isn't done? Because that's the thing, is if the gameplay isn't there, why release the ship? And they're not going to the release doesn't mean they're done. They've said this many times before. They're not going to stop working on the game. But if this particular part of the gameplay isn't done for this particular ship, then they're not going to release the ship. And I think that's perfectly reasonable, because we have seen what happens when you release the ship without the gameplay, and then you have to go back in and refactor the ship, and people have a dead ship, and people hate that. And we have the Reclaimer, which is being bastardized to do its job right now, and they've said it's going to need a not insubstantial rework. It's okay to wait and have it done right the first time, instead of having to go back in and make it that much more difficult to rework the Reclaimer, rework the Pioneer, rework God knows what. So I think it's perfectly fine to wait for the gameplay, especially with, we're not looking at what we've been, for the future. We're not looking at what we've been looking at for the past. We have 1,100 plus devs and counting. They're targeting a studio of over 1,500 devs, so they can get this gameplay done, get these things in, get these ships made, get these systems built. It's not going to take another 10 years to get to 1.0. It's not going to take another 10 years to get that release view out and these ships done. So, adjust your expectations for the new reality that is CIG. Squadron 42 Episode 1 being done, devs being reprioritized back to the PU, and the studio itself growing at a ever-increasing rate year after year in order to make this happen.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that.
Pretty succinct answer there.
Ranger, do you think we should see them wait for the stuff to come out, or do you think they should come out as soon as they're done?
We're talking about specifically about resources, though, or resource management, right?
Not resource management's part of it, but like, for instance, like the Banu Merchantman. Should the Banu Merchantman come in if it's done, even though they don't have the mechanics for like trading, or should the Orion come in even if it doesn't have the full?
It's a bit of a loaded question. If I had a Banu Merchantman, who am I kidding? I do have one, but my point was, if as an owner of a Banu Merchantman, I can imagine that somebody would be really kind of jazzed and impatient about wanting to jump in and play it, even if it didn't have the gameplay, just because of the cool factor. I'm sure there would at least be a good cargo carrier, even though you can't set up the shops and everything in it. It's difficult to say. It's such a loaded question, because you can release it like that, and then there's always going to be people who complain about it, and just generates negativity. I don't know if I really have a good firm answer on it. I think I like even the Reclaimer, that to use your point, came out before they had the gameplay on it, but it was still cool. People were driving around for a little while, and eventually, once the newness of it kind of went away, people left it in the dustbin for a little bit. But at least they had that urge sated, where they could take out something that they've put their efforts into and played with it. But I don't know. I so I would love to see an Idris come out even before capital ship gameplay is out and before resource management is, because I think we could all probably have a lot of fun on it, just getting in the turrets and blowing people up.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I don't know if I could come up with a blanket answer on that. It depends on what state it's in.
I tend to agree that, like, the problem I have is that I have a Perseus, right, which is not a capital ship, but like this is the kind of goes with like a lot of the larger ships. Would I want the Perseus if only thing that happened was its guns? If the only thing that worked was its guns? And the answer is, I don't know, probably not, because I'd rather have it like fully functional and have it fully available than to just kind of pull it out. Because the other thing I'm worried about is, let's look at the Reclaimer as an example. Like, I famously think the Reclaimer is a great warning, like not a good thing. It's a warning for CIG as a reminder of how, developing a ship before the gameplay for it is done is going to cause so many problems. Because I personally think the whole thing needs to get revamped from the ground up. CIG probably won't do that, but I just think it's
to be fair,
they
needed that for Squadron. It was a
Squadron thing.
It was a big set piece, and they hadn't quite gone through the motions to know what the repercussions would be of putting out a ship. That really was in the early stages, where being able to just put out a huge ship like that was a big wow factor thing. People really started talking about the game, and they were very impressed by it. And hindsight is always better than foresight. And that was definitely a lesson to learn, but I don't know if that, you can understand why they did it. And you're right, having to go back and, oh, look at that. Now we're doing the pet thing. Very key. I think cautiously, again, it's hard to put a blanket answer on that. What else does the Perseus do besides guns, though?
I mean, it's got like the automatic like missile defense system on top of it, and it's got torpedoes and stuff like that. It's got its own dedicated torpedo bay.
Okay. Oh yeah.
So like, it's one of those ships like it could probably end up and be fine, but like the 890 is supposed to have an automated point defense system on it, but it doesn't.
Well, here's a counter to my point that I just made.
Yeah,
holding it back until all the gameplay is ready absolutely builds up the anticipation factor.
Yeah.
So that people, when they finally do get it, it's everything they dreamed of and more. And that has its benefits on its own. So yeah, I could see that. I could see the reason for, especially now. There are plenty of WoW ships out there for people to play with.
Yeah.
I'm gonna reverse my answer. I agree. They should wait.
The reason why
ship backlog is not going to take as long as some people in the community think it's going to take.
Well,
just like all the gameplay mechanics and everything aren't going to take 10 years either.
Yeah, and we the ship team is fucking massive now. Like when the Benny Merchantman was
continuing to grow.
More power to them, because if that's the money machine, I'd take my wallet.
The team when the Benny Merchantman left was a lot smaller, and I think now it's probably maybe twice the size, because they built an entire team in Montreal for ships before they bought Montreal. So like they had an entire team set up there ready to go, and then now it's all just internal CIG team now. So it's like it's even on top of that.
That team is put there in order to grow, because they intend to grow that team along with the rest of CIG Montreal. And when they also talked about that, they said they were going to add 2 more ship teams, development teams, to the UK.
Mm-hmm.
They said that in an SCL. So the numbers that they gave us at CitizenCon that is what they are at that point. They're continuing to grow those teams. So we're what was it, up to 28 or 38 or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
In a year or two's time, we'll probably be looking at 50 plus people working on ships with the tools and the processes and everything that they've been talking about. So it's we're not going to, the pace that we've had before is not the pace we're going to have in the future. And so it's okay to wait a bit longer for things to be done right, instead of making more work to be done on the back end to rework things and have people be disappointed.
Yeah.
You know,
My,
the days
my,
of the reclaimers should be dead and gone. In
my point being is that I'd much rather have the ship working so that I didn't get a broken ship that I'm like, oh, this is nice. And then like 3 weeks later, like, I can't use this for anything. And then wait another 2 years for it to actually have its purpose put into the game. Because it's just like, great. Now I feel like I got ran over by a railroad. Now I feel like I got run for everything I owned, you know, sort of thing. So, all right. So we've got 21 questions still. I'm going to go through pretty quick.
Blimey.
Because we're already well over what we were supposed to be doing. I've got a very hungry wife I said, we'll go out and get food after this if everything goes out. And she's like, sure. And so I don't want to.
Let's speed run these.
Yeah, I don't want to open the door and be eaten.
Anyway.
Yeah. These are some pretty ones. Does Star Citizen 1.0 include AI blades or NPCs? We don't know.
Nah.
CIG probably doesn't even know. That's one of the reasons why the roadmap roundup will probably on Wednesday almost certainly not have another progress tracker update, because they're waiting for the entirety of the roadmap to be fleshed out of what they want 1.0 to be before they update it. So
we'll probably get the near term for the roadmap for this year as normal with like near term progress tracker stuff, and then they'll do the long term stuff at CitizenCon and then add it.
Yeah,
because that's basically what they talked about in the letter from the chairman, is that we'll hear about that at CitizenCon essentially, you know, later this year, you know. So
yeah, but
they did say that they were trying to get the near term plans out to us sooner.
Say we can only get 200 while waiting on dynamic server meshing. What would you be disappointed? 200 people? They had more than 200 people in static meshing.
Yeah, that's not going to happen. I've got to be honest. That's just going to be.
That's a false criteria.
Yeah, they had 800 people on their first test, and it was
the issue is with static server meshing. Not only can you not dynamically scale the servers, but you have one replication layer.
Yeah, you
can't scale up there's a limit to how many connections the replication layer can service. And I had a networking dev on ESO in my chat a little while back, and he said they use a similar piece of technology that does similar things, that doesn't, you know, do server meshing like CIG does and all that, but they do have a thing like the replication layer. And I want to say he said the upper limit was like 600 connections is what it could handle. So I wouldn't be surprised if, like, at 4.0 launch, if they picked a number that was reasonable and performed well and kept it there, you'll say 400 rather than the 600, 800 where it's not performing well and it's breaking, in order to keep it manageable and have a better performing launch and safer launch for 4.0, which has been touted for so long.
Yeah. Yeah, and it just so happens that I believe several people who work on the team that works on the back end also worked for ESO. Because I remember that famous comment, I think it was Chad McKinney who worked on ESO, because he made a comment on the whole topic. He said, because he said, it's funny you should bring up ESO, because I built that system, or I helped build that system in the first place, so I can tell you that it doesn't work the same way you think. So, yeah. And so I don't think anyone, honestly, I don't care about player numbers that much as I care about NPCs and the universe having like input. Like, it doesn't matter if you can have 700 people in a universe if the universe is boring and there is no no interaction and there's no NPCs to do missions, or the missions aren't fun, or there aren't events and that kind of stuff like that. Like that I think that's much more important to me than it is having 200, 700, 1,000 people in a server. So.
Yeah, they'll push the player counts even more in the tech preview channel when 4.0 goes live, because then they're going to be testing not only, because with dynamic, not only are you scaling up more servers, you also have to scale up more the individual replication layers. They're called replicants, to handle that load.
CIG and their sneaky science fiction references.
Right? Yeah.
They have replicants running the servers. and the server blades. So you should run the blades with us with the replicants.
Oh gosh, what's the name of that the Blade Runner test? I should have done that on Benoit when I had him at Citizen.
The Voight comp test. That's what Minstrel says. Yeah.
Are you a replicant, Benoit?
Yeah.
Are you
Let's see. Let's go through some of this. Polaris released for Invictus, or maybe just a flyby tour? That's a good question.
When is Invictus again? May?
End of May.
Yeah.
I feel like it's too soon. It was just coming out of White Box, and that doesn't get into lighting, final art, the tech, the ship tech parts.
The exterior is in Lot Zero. The exterior is in Lot Zero.
Yeah.
It's the interior
Probably a
just
flyby
going
at
into
least.
black. Yeah, into gray box. So
I don't think Invictus, but I do think that could be one of the ship with 4.0. Like if they're targeting in July, August 4.0, I think that's potentially reasonable.
Nice big sale to go along with all that publicity.
I mean, yeah. It would
Well, and the other
make
thing
sense.
is, it's the first capital ship to be built from the ground up with resource management in mind, and resource management is targeting 4.0.
It does make sense, and it does track with CIG's history now of releasing ships that complement certain gameplay loops. So yeah, I can see that happening, but not for. It would be nice though if during Invictus, if it was on the RSI show floor, just sitting there, not able to go into, but just its current hull, because they've done that before for other ships. They have down half.
Remember the Redeemer?
yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Sorry,
I'll be okay with that.
Yeah, if it's like a LOD whatever, final art in the exterior and it's there on the show floor, yeah, that'd be really cool.
Just see it,
I would.
I could almost see it being final art on the exterior by the time we hit the end of May. It's just it's at that like edge of like it could be done before the Invictus entirely, but I probably would be rushed, and I'm sure CIG doesn't want to rush the Polaris
that's
of
the
all
thing.
things.
They would absolutely have to rush it to make it work.
Yeah. And
it would be a lovely centerpiece, even just sitting there on the show floor, just saying, "Hey, we're still working on it. Here's how it looks."
Yeah,
I mean, I'm happy to be wrong, but
me too, absolutely.
All right. How does everyone feel about jump gates possibly not having a huge human-built rings? I'm okay with that.
I like the rings.
I
like the idea of the rings.
Yeah, they added.
I like them for heavily trafficked areas. Like they kind of make sense if the ring does the jump gate opening, and that way you don't have to use whatever fuel power, and you just pay for it. And obviously, like Paul has said many times, going into pyro, that's dumb. And I do think that you could kind of use the ring as this is the UAE has discovered the most stable area of this jump nexus area, and put the ring around it to stabilize it, and use all the other sort of access points at your own risk with your own jump point. But I think that could work. I just think that the concept art for it that the artist did is up on ArtStation, and he did a really good job. I think it looks cool, and so I kind of it seems kind of anticlimactic to just have a glowy thing at the end of the passage.
I agree.
I love the CIG sort of like that when their concept teams have gone through and made these beautiful macro pieces of architecture in space. The Aaron Halo array, for example, is that is an incredible piece of looking. All of the ArcCorp concept artwork. Same thing with the jump gates. It's just it's an occasion, at least into, as you say, Tree. Into sort of like civilized systems that have been trafficked and then wanted to stabilize it, and it gave you certain benefits as a result of that. But you might also be subsequent to scans and whatnot, because advocacy's there. That kind of thing. You want to smuggle, you take one of the more risky routes.
Jump gates doesn't mean they aren't natural anymore. It just means that the jump gate can do what the ship can do.
Yeah,
and access the wormhole.
It's just
at this particular point.
Yeah, it's like it has its own gigantic quantum drive and jump gate built into it. I could see it as like if you for all of you old folks like myself who played Freelancer. Freelancer had the highway system, which were rings.
That's part of the inspiration for the
jump.
Nexus Bridge network in Give Them Hope that I'm working on. Is a mix of what Star Citizen was kind of looking at, and Freelancer and a few other IPs, and that's the point of it is, the jump gate allows a ship without this massive jump drive to access the wormhole or to access the Nexus, which is like higher space time. But to me, it's cool that that's there. It's not mandatory, but it's there, and it's it's the safe and patrolled route. Controlled by the UEE. Like, this is the marker for you're doing the border crossing and all that. And
yeah, I think those are fine because it would do as well as would allow for more. It's a gameplay accessibility thing, because it means that if you have an Aurora, you can go from Magnus to Stanton. Yeah, they've got the infrastructure for it. You don't even have to have a jump gate. You can just go there. But like, you want to go into Pyro, you don't have a jump drive. Sorry, that's a dangerous place. Get yourself a jump drive and go do it in special. So it kind of makes them unique and interesting. Each jump gate becomes its own different adventure, and it could differentiate it between like the civilized society and the wild frontier. So
yeah, and you could do it that way too, because if they what they call it, like the estuary system, if you access these less stable points, maybe it costs you more fuel, maybe it's more dangerous, you have more risk to taking damage to your jump drive. But if you use this one, it does it for you. There's no risk. It just costs you a fee, blah, blah, blah. There's lots of ways to incorporate gameplay mechanics, but a lot of player agency. And that's what I liked about it, in that you could have that, but also it looks cool. Whereas like the VFX look cool, but put the VFX inside a ring and it looks better.
Do we know
Absolutely.
for sure that they ditched the rings? Because they came out with a letter, a monthly.
yeah,
A monthly.
So
they came out with that top image that's on ArtStation. They used that image in one of the monthly report emails.
They said that they were moving away from the rings. Was something they
Dave
said?
Haddock.
Dave Haddock said that in one of the updates.
He said, I think we're moving away from that, so we'll see. But then again, we're only going to have one working jump point here pretty soon, so we'll see. And it's the one going into Pyro.
So I do think that the rings are valuable, but I think that they should be used narratively as well as mechanically, as a means of saying, this is the abandoned hope, ye who enter here, is the non-ring jump point. But the ring jump point is like, taking a Sunday stroll through the hills of LA. It's simple,
especially
easy.
if you're smuggling.
Yeah.
Like peak smuggling gameplay. No, you don't go through here. You go through one of these peripheral winds, however many hundreds of thousands of kilometers over here that's still in the jump point area, but you're doing it at your own risk because you're trying to not walk through customs.
Yeah, exactly.
Pretty much. Yeah.
So, how will logging off from a capital ship work, especially if there aren't enough beds? We don't know, because that is... Chad McKinney even just basically said they have to reevaluate everything about
It is an
logging
open
off.
problem.
Yeah. So,
Tricky
I
one.
was trying to find it earlier because I did see it was one of those things that popped up in my Star Citizen newsfeed where they put all dev comments, and someone did say that they did still plan for us to be able to take control of NPC crew to Agent Smith. Someone did reiterate that recently in the last several months. I just haven't been able to find the link, but I swear to God I saw it. I wouldn't say it if I didn't.
That would facilitate group gameplay, much easier.
I think
It's
it's
much
a
more
good
likely
idea.
to make it happen. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, we'll see what they end up doing with bed logging and how that works.
I've always felt like there is a place in Star Citizen for fast travel, but it's not in game. It's more of your friends are like, we need to meet up at Terra, at this weekend, and you're working all week. You can go onto the mobile app or onto the website and be like, my character is going to move to Terra, and your account will be budgeted, and then your character will just turn into a quanta point or virtual NPC, and then move their way to that location with all the risks
Great idea,
involved.
actually.
And
It's a great idea.
And
hopefully your Genesis Starliner doesn't lose a door panel on the way there.
Yeah, just hope it ain't Boeing.
Yeah, exactly.
Is this Genesis a Genesis Max, or is this a regular Genesis? When was this built?
Roll that 20-sided dice.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that would be a good compromise, because you're still rolling the dice of am I going to die or not, but also you don't have to worry about it. Like, yeah, there's gonna be a cost involved, and you could end up screwing yourself up and be like, well, I lost all this money and I can't do it this weekend. But you still have the ability to just move your stuff if you need to. So, all right. We've got 14 questions, and I'm gonna clear some of these. The kind of more superfluous ones. Will players' potato computer be able to handle some of the capital ships? Vulcan.
Yep.
Yeah. Welcome to your solution.
Yeah. The Vulcan and the DLSS is coming in. There's a bunch of other stuff like that. So, yeah, almost certainly.
Also important to remember, your computers, even the potato ones, are improving and becoming more powerful over time, because even what we dub as a potato today was yesterday's super gaming rig. So it'll all match up and marry up sooner rather than later.
And our sweet potatoes.
Indeed.
And then we already talked about this one. The percent-wise, what's a good balance between crew for cap ship with player versus AI? I think we all agreed on the whole idea of, like, think of it as your players or your officers aboard a ship, and your AI is the fodder, the least value one, the dude you stick in a gun to shoot at something, or fix this thing because you tell them to. So
yeah.
That percentage depends entirely on the size of the ship. Like, Javelin's going to have a higher player cap and probably more NPCs to player, but an Idris probably doesn't. So, Vulcan max 10% more FPS, can't fix this engine.
That is defeatist.
Yeah. I've seen this engine improve. I've seen CIG improve the performance for Star Citizen, like, dramatically over the last 2 years. So, like,
yeah. Well, gosh, what's that dev's name? I talked to him at CitizenCon because no one knew who he was. Tall guy who's working on Vulcan and wants to do VR.
Oh, I know who you're talking to, and I'm drawing a blank on his name.
He showed us on ISC, hey, this is where the bottleneck is. This is
Sylvan.
what Vulcan is meant to fix Sylvan, by moving this onto the GPU. Gen 12 gave us a pretty decent improvement, and wasn't even designed to do that, and has barely been optimized. We needed Gen 12 to get to Vulcan, and Vulcan is designed to move the bottleneck that is on the CPU onto the GPU and allow for parallel and multi-threading. That's the whole point of Vulcan, is to get much better FPS, to get better performance, and also to allow for things like the global illumination and those those graphic things. But it's gonna happen. It just hasn't. They're prioritized. They're working on this now because it's got to be a part of Squadron.
Yeah.
So. Okay, I'm just going through some of these other ones. We definitely answered that one, about the 1 to 10. How many roles do you think will be filled on a cap ship the size of an Idris or a Kraken?
All of them.
Yeah, all of them.
Yeah.
Is he looking for a count, or
just look at the minimum and maximum crew?
That will give you a good idea.
Yeah.
The more people on it, the more efficiently it'll run.
Yeah, and I think we talked about it again. Like, I think there is a place for NPCs on capital ships, and that's with the positions you don't want people to do because it's just boring, or you don't have the space for them because you want a gunnery officer, not a gunner. you want a chief engineer, not a mechanic. You want a navigation officer, not a pilot. So whatever. Is that what I wrote? I thought I asked which roles. Yeah, that's what you wrote. So, but yeah, we kind of went over that, like chief engineer, chief navigation officer, comms officer, probably SERPs, what is it?
Radar guy.
Radar.
Yeah, radar. Like sensor operator.
And radar has to wear a dress as a requirement.
Yes, that's the requirement.
That's an odd reference some people may not get.
You know what? Because going for that Section 8.
You know what the Idris is going to need, I hope, is a landing tower. I don't know what you call it on a carrier.
ATC.
I guess tower, ATC.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They actually have that. Yeah, I mean in the
Is that a
Squadron
player?
2.
Oh, yeah, it was
Roll,
Klinger.
though.
Whoops.
Yeah, what's Klinger?
Oh, it's Klinger.
Yeah. Radar is the smart guy who knew everything before.
Yeah,
it
the
was
one that.
happening.
Right.
Yeah.
Phew.
Uh,
Do we know if they're going to actually allow you to act, like have any
There's a-
actual role to play on an Idris, like buttons
there's
to
a
press to to sign? I guess you don't really need any gameplay if you're just talking to somebody on the radio.
Yeah, there's a position for it on the
Yeah.
Idris because it's first squadron. Because like
Yeah.
we talked, you talked in one of the previews they did. You talked to them when they were
Yeah.
like talking.
I think it's that
stuff.
desk that overlooks the hangar bay.
Yeah.
I think.
So, I'd love to see it. I don't know what they would do necessarily, but I'd love to see that.
Well, I mean, if you got theoretically 3 positions there or more. I think being able to play Tetris with them would be their role. Figuring out who's gonna. If you're trying to bring a bunch of people in from a fight and you need to take off, the ship needs to leave. How do you get them all back there in some kind of order?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, ordering who's landing when, and maybe even opening the hangar bay doors and closing them and turning off and on the air shields and stuff like that. So maybe even managing things like turning on and off fuel pumps and those sorts of things. So someone who's just like overseeing the entirety of the deck for those sorts of things. So, all right. We have 7 questions. They're all pretty long. I'm gonna try to kind of get some of them pretty simple. Unknown Guardian asks, how much fleet do you think we will on average be brought out when a cap ship goes anywhere? So like how many other support vessels do you think?
Depends on how smart the captain.
Yeah.
There's the size of the vessel, the goal of the op, the signs of capital vessel, the location.
Yeah.
If you're in the middle of Terra or bloody, Earth, Sol, you're not going to probably need that much in terms of escort. But, if you're over in Pyro and you're bringing out a capital grade, combat vessel, you're going to need quite a lot of escort.
Just also things like support ships, like
fuel
refuel
as
ships,
Every mission is unique.
Yeah. Would you be surprised if most whole E's are only brought out when when an org wants to move bases, or would you even expect it to be that way, or that way more or less? Basically,
I wouldn't be surprised at all.
I wouldn't be surprised. I honestly see the whole E being a ship that the captain will sell space on to other people to transport their stuff from point A to point B. A bit like a regular cargo container ship of today,
Yeah,
you'll
you
buy
take missions.
so much.
Yeah.
They might take some of their own missions, they might take their own refined goods, they might take some on other corporations' gear, and they'll just put it all on the ship, and they'll just, they'll charge a charter fee for it. I can see it working that way personally.
Yeah, I agree. The whole E sounds massive, but you also got to remember that the economy itself is not scaled yet. When the economy starts to scale, you'll start to see the need for a whole E, because as
You're
people
still
pointed
gonna have
out,
cargo missions that require that much volume.
I was kind of thinking, like, if they get into base building, I would imagine you don't need an entire hull E to build like a couple buildings here and there. But maybe if they get into a point where you're building space stations, I would hope that they require a huge buttload of resources to build, and maybe that's where the hull E would come into play.
Yeah. But I mean, think about this. This has been pointed out. The logistics required to keep a planet like ArcCorp alive is insane. Oxygen, food, water. I mean, they do have some of that because they still have the oceans, but like a lot of just the materials to keep people alive on a planet like that would require unfathomable tons of food a day, because they can't grow their own food there. So,
Bit of an oversight, isn't it?
Yeah.
They built a giant planet-sized city. Maybe you should have just kept it to the continent,
Yeah. So like that's what's the whole E for? That, when you need to ship enough potatoes to feed the entirety of Area 18 for a day, you send out the whole E with just potatoes. So, yeah, that kind of stuff. All right. In terms of upkeep for capital ships, how many resources do you think will be needed to operate a vessel at minimum to full operational level? Talking fuel, repairs, munitions, money. We're generalizing to an extreme level here, I know, but every ship is different after all. But on average, no one could tell you the average. Because
11.
Yeah, because like a Polaris will require less resources than a Idris, which will require less resources than a Javelin, which will require less resource than, whatever. Like the Kraken is going to be different from, because the Kraken also has to have fuel for its fighters, whereas like a Polaris only has one. There's more fighters for a Kraken than there is for an Idris. That's like asking how much does it cost to run a one ship in the U.S. Navy? Okay.
we'll only know when we have the ship in our hands and in verse with all its systems working.
Let me check my bank statement.
Yeah. So, I think I get the point, but yeah. Let's see. Red Dawn asks, MMOs lately have started a trend towards more individual content. I think many people that have big ships do lean heavily on the idea that these ships can be crewed with the help of NPCs. Do you think CIG has to make concessions to keep these people happy?
No.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one. I don't think CIG needs to make a concession. I think they're going to make what they want to see their game become. And I think there are enough people who are up for that to where they don't need to compromise, if you get my meaning, on their vision. If
CIG was going to kneel to that idea, they would have done so a long time ago. There have been many years where people, the idea of having, multi-crew, multi-people having to do stuff, where people were like, this is awful, I just want to play alone. And CIG just said, okay, bye. Because CIG has themselves said, we don't want to make the game only for solo people or for group people, but there are going to be things that the solo group people can do and that the group people can't, and vice versa, in terms of like viability and such. So
I would challenge the idea that MMOs are going away from that, because some of the best gameplay experience I've had have been in group environments. If you design the game right, you don't have to really make concessions. There are already solo type missions for people in the game, and that's kind of the idea. There's no way that huge swath of people is going to just go away. There's a bazillion people out there who don't have the time to commit to extended gameplay with a group. Yeah. And so you kind of have to, you support that by design, having those one-off missions for people to go out and mine a small amount of resources that contribute to a greater whole. But then you also have those big experiences so that you can cater to that large group play and build off that player content. Yeah, I don't see this as a one or the other.
There are always going to be needs for a whole A as much as there is a whole E. There's going to be as much use in a solo Hornet as there is a Polaris, because the Hornet needs to go deal with small groups of outlaws on the in very populated space, whereas the Polaris gets pulled out to go attack larger groups in unlawful space. So yeah. All right, we got the last three questions. Fishby asks, if CIG made a capital corvette with a focus on big guns over torpedoes, why might a group choose that over Polaris and vice versa? I think he's asking this directly from me because I said that. That was
I think it is.
Why? Because it's MMO. So if you think about an MMO, you think about the class system, and this is what CIG is already doing with their sort of archetype stuff. In that archetype, the Polaris is a DPS. It's very fast. It can hit hard, but if it gets touched, it's probably going to fall apart. So its speed is its armor compared to its actual armor. But a ship like I just described is more of a tank, or like draws aggro, can take tons of punches, has thick armor, slow, but is designed and can still take a mean, like can dish out a mean amount of firepower, but it's not going to hit a target far away or do enough damage to like destroy an Idris. But it might be able to sit there and turtle up and take a couple hits from an Idris before it has to bow out. So in a group gameplay with multiple capital ships, it would serve the purpose of you either pay attention to it, or it takes its railgun and puts holes in you. It takes its guns and it just starts shooting you. It just starts blasting. And that's the point of a tank. It's designed to you have to pay attention to it, And when you're paying attention to it, you're doing exactly what it wants you to do, because you're not attacking the squishies. But if you attack the squishies, it can still come up behind you and stab you to death. It's just not as effective as the squishies. And that's the whole like kind of gameplay kind of like back and forth. So
are we gonna get the shield bash?
yes. Remember, there was that one design which was designed by the current head of CIG's ship team in LA, which he did the shield and the sword combo. Or no, that was somebody else, wasn't it? I think he did But yeah, there was that idea of having like a shield sword combo where you're jab that. So yeah, shield bash. The anvil shield, and just name it after different shields, like the buckler and the roundel and all,
or whatever, the heater.
Yeah. All right. Steve that answer asks, what are each of you looking forward to the most in 3.23? Radar Ranger.
Ooh. Oh, that's no fair. The most honest, I'm gonna say the new star map.
Okay.
That thing has been a pain in my ass for a decade. Well, I don't know how long has the star map even been out? When was 3.0 out? Either way, I would say star map, but just because it's been such a thorn in everybody's side for so long. It looks really good, the new one. It's probably still going to need a little bit of iteration on it, but it's light years above what's out there. I mean, who hasn't zoomed into a planet only to have it disappear on you?
It's not really fun. It's my life.
Yeah. So I would say that probably. Out of all, I mean, to be honest, there's a lot of good stuff in this patch. There's a lot of stuff that everybody's been waiting on for a long time. The loot stuff, better FPS mechanics. I'll stick with the star map. Yeah.
Tree.
My serious answer is also the star map, just because that is a big issue. But the meme answer is now the Turbo Pelican or Turbodactyl, depending on which camp you're in.
I like to call it it's called the Maroc, so I like to call it the Martok bird. So
yeah. I love that little guy, and I want to domesticate one. And
you're gonna lock it in your captain quarters.
Mm-hmm. But if I had to pick a serious answer that wasn't the star map, it's the freight elevators.
Mm-hmm. Loken.
Yeah, again, star map first and foremost for me. But if I had to choose one that isn't freight, which I was also going to choose, that is not the star map. Honestly, FPS changes. I'm looking forward to the new ground combat changes that are going to come in.
Oh man, and that list that just put out in the Evocati patch, holy crap!
I forgot.
Wow.
The head of that team. The head of that team on Twitter called it the FPS apocalypse patch because how much it's fundamentally changes. But yeah,
I'm not necessarily
right?
Yeah,
I'm not necessarily thrilled with some of the changes they're making to a few of the weapons, but overall it looks like it's going to be good. And just there's so much supporting infrastructure coming in. FPS maps, for example, the ability for me to say, hey, there's a target north, and actually be able to point north. Just that's huge.
Logan, what do you think about the crosshairs?
I like the crosshair. I'm up for it. I think it's a cool way of delineating combat armor to non-combat armor, because it comes up only for those. So I like that personally. I like that that extra.
I'm a little undecided on it because I've been playing AC a lot. It's been a lot of fun, especially some of the special modes that they've been releasing that are like short-lived, the temporary ones. It's been kind of fun in a way, not having that magical aiming point. But then again, it's pissed me off on several occasions where I thought I was aiming at somebody, should have been able to blow their head off, and I was missing everything, and I got killed anyway.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I'm a fan of it personally. I think it makes sense with the technology level of the UEE at this point in history. So I'm good with it personally. But yeah,
I have to look it up real quickly, but because I couldn't tell you exactly, because you've all taken up most of what I would have chosen, but to look through what they have, maybe I want the urge to say the replication layer is high, but let's see.
Vulcan's pretty hot, by the way.
Vulcan, yes. I don't know. It's not been confirmed that's coming in, but pretty much everything but it's confirmed.
It's not being denied, though.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, at least.
I will say reputation hostility, the hostility reputation system.
Oh, yeah.
That's the first step towards really good, like fuck around and find out mechanics, because it's like, hey, you've been bounty hunting this entire time, killing Ninetails. Guess what? They don't want you in Grimhex. You can't go there anymore. It's like, that's great. I like that idea. It's like, oh, so now there's a consequence to your actions, so you can't actually just use that. And, you know, there'll be people who are more willing to shoot you if you are a reformed criminal and you just you accidentally shoot a Hurston Dynamics like security officer. It's like, yeah, they're already going to look at you side-eyed because they don't trust you. That makes sense. So I like that sort of, you know. But yeah, I didn't even think about the distribution centers EVA. There's just so much. 3.23 is so huge. And I was looking at it and I'd entirely forgotten about freaking cargo hauling missions were on there. There's the custom lobbies for Arena Commander.
Basically, it becomes a new game at this point.
Yeah,
it's that metamorphic.
Someone gave me the Raz for using the thumbnail saying game changer for something. Like, everything can't be a game changer, and I'm like, yes, it can when you're CIG and you're releasing 3.23.
Yeah, it really is a game changer. This one, I know what you see. I see it. You see it in every single small tiny iteration. This is a game changer. Oh my god, thumbnails. Nah, this really is a game changer. This really is going to change everything.
Yeah. All right. So this is the last one, and I think this is the spicy one. Oh, Tree's gone. Ooh. So I was gonna have Tree do it, but I'll start with you on this one, Loken. Throw you on the hot seat. Do you feel free claiming should go away in 3.23 with the economy team?
Free claiming. Describe to me what that is.
So when you claim a ship, you know how it has a timer, and eventually you can get it back.
Yep.
You have to pay for it to come back.
Yeah. Well, you do, don't you? Already, you pay a fee.
Only if you want to expedite it.
Only if you want to expedite it. It's free. Otherwise, at the end.
Oh gosh, right. Okay, I'm with you.
So you can either expedite it for faster, or you can, wait. Or you can pay
not yet,
full
because
price.
I still think that's the game's too unstable yet, and has too many times where things blow up that just aren't your faults, and we're still too testing right now to let. Yeah. I do want that, but not right this second. So that's a bit too punishing at the moment.
Yeah. Could not have said it better.
I personally don't think that the free claiming should ever go away. It's a great mechanic. I think the biggest thing is to change the timers, to increase the timers.
Yeah, I mean, that's the sink and that's the penalty. You have to wait for it. Why screw somebody twice?
Yeah, and I know a lot of people are like, well, I just won't play. And it's like, well, don't take your big expensive ship out and be bad. Like that's CIG
skill issue.
It's CIG saying get good.
CIG is saying there is a skill issue here, and it is the individual playing the game.
Yeah, and of course there are still bugs and other things like that. And I understand that their argument. People are like, well, my ship got exploded because Star Citizen decided that my ship needed to be eaten by the to be sucked into the gravity well of the station and then be turned inside out and pooped out. But I get it, but I also think that at a certain point, CIG is going to have to eventually rip that Band-Aid off, and there will always be some weird thing that happens or unfortunate incident that happens, because it's kind of how Star Citizen's built. But I'd rather do that sooner rather than later, just so they can balance the economy out. What do you think, Radar Ranger? Should we have a free? Should they be doing rid of free claims?
Nope. For exactly the same reason Logan said. Game's still too buggy. Way too easy to have some new guy, have an issue with his ship, and the idea of having to go out and pay money that you potentially don't have. It's too early. They already tried increasing the wait times and the some of the other stuff, and all it did was annoy people because things are still too unstable. I think when they get, and I agree with you, I don't think they should ever get rid of it. The free claiming.
Yeah, as long as you have insurance, you're already paying the deductible, or the premium. You'll be already paying your premium month to month. So it's kind of the whole point. So, all All right, I think because Tree's probably off getting stuff done with his family, so emergency. So thank you for coming on. Thank you for hanging out with us. Thank you to Tree and Loken and Radar for coming on. Make sure you subscribe to Loken and Tree on their Twitch and YouTubes, and make sure you're downloading My Radar, the app. I personally swear by it. It's very cool and it's very good, and you're still improving on it since the last time since I got it. It's been new features been added all the time. So. So it's a great way, especially if you're living in. It's not just in the U.S., right? It's also in Europe and.
Yeah, it's worldwide, but mostly UK, Japan, Australia, South Korea, and it does have worldwide, but that's where we have high-end radar. So
high-end radar, okay,
yeah,
awesome. And thank you for watching. As always, make sure you hit that subscribe button and like the video if you enjoyed this. If you're watching this out on YouTube after the fact, and I want to hear your thoughts on any of the things we talked about down below in the comments. And yeah, like I say every time, hope to see you someday in the black.